And so, ladies and gentlemen, good morning, welcome, and indeed, welcome to paradise. And whenever you say that, of course, people in Jersey will laugh straight away, welcome to paradise. But in reality, it's a Friday, it's very sunny, summer's on the way. Tourists, according to Keith, who's in the room, tell us that have already started arriving. Less than 1% unemployment in this island. Lower tax rates than most places in the world for personal tax. And higher disposable income than most places in the world. Low crime, safe place to bring up kids. There are many reasons for us to be extremely optimistic and very happy that we live and that we trade in Jersey. Of course, the evil, ugly sister to optimism is complacency. Are we complacent? Do we think that it's always been good and it will always stay good? We'll find out, I think, a little bit more about that from some of our speakers today, and maybe we can consider those things. But I'm reminded as I met people coming in and as I looked around the room, many familiar faces from this industry, from this sector. And I looked at the incredible experience of the people within these walls. And I've used this analogy before, and it's never been more pertinent than today. When you start to add up the years of experience that you personally will have had in this sector, and then you look at the people around you and you add up the experience they've had in this sector, and then you take an average, and you know, I can look at Laurie and then I can look at David Elliott, so I have to take an average. And it comes out, I think, roughly, and I may be wrong, but I think roughly per head, with those that have been in the industry for 40, 45 years and those who have been in the industry for 15 years, about 25 years per person in this room. That's 2,500 years of experience in retail in this room right now. Now, if we can't harness that, we can't do anything. So let's be optimistic, but let's not be complacent. It's a proud moment for the Jersey Chamber of Commerce to have brought this event to be. It's been something that I personally wanted to bring from early on, and those on the Retail and Supply Committee know that we've been talking about it for about the last 9 months to bring it to be. I'd very much like to acknowledge the support we've had from many in this room to make it happen. The Retail and Supply Committee, as I mentioned, at the Jersey Chamber of Commerce. The Jersey Retail Association have been extraordinarily helpful and really guiding in this. The Retail Strategy Committee, the steering group. Dan Houseago and the team at Growth, Housing and Environment, as they're now known. Vienna Bakeries, who did some nice fresh rolls for us this morning. Thank you, David, for those. The Pom d'Or for their excellent service. Thanks to Ozif Advertising, who are filming the event, and that will be available at a later date with all the speeches, so you will be able to look back. And for those of your colleagues that didn't make this, perhaps you can share that with them, and we'll let you know when that is available. Photo reportage for their capturing of the day, which will appear in the April edition of Business Brief. And to our journalists who have made it for us today as well. A breakfast roll and they'll be there. Today is about bringing people together who are affected by or in the retail sector. Those who are on the shop floor, those who make decisions on our behalf, and those who have the experience to offer signposts towards perhaps the future of retail and what good might look like. Chamber's been in existence since 1768. It's been representing shopkeepers since then. In the past 12 months, it's been a busy time for Chamber in retail. We've strongly represented, among with other sectors, on the retail tax, the minimum wage, liquor licensing tax, Sunday trading, online shopping, the retail strategy, business licensing, migration controls, Brexit supply chains, of which there's been much work, commercial rental prices, the central market, family-friendly legislation, and even this week, plans to close a crucial access and exit road right outside this hotel. Today, we'll continue with the role that Chamber sets out to do for its members and for the greater community of the island. We'll do what we say we do. We will interact, we will inform, and we will influence. Ladies and gentlemen, please enjoy the day. Thank you very much indeed for coming. It's a distinct pleasure at this point to, I think we seem to have a little fault on there, which we'll try and fix one way or another. Apologies, hadn't noticed that. We obviously logged ourselves out. Distinct pleasure to bring a guest that brings so much experience, so much knowledge that today alone, if it finished in the next half an hour, would be worth you coming to. We're delighted that Helen has flown in this morning, and we're delighted that, as always, and as has already been told to Helen, it's another beautiful sunny day in Jersey, as it is every day, and possibly every night as well. I won't go on any further about Helen's experience and Helen's thoughts on retail, because that's what you're just about to hear. Ladies and gentlemen, will you please welcome Helen Dickinson, OBE, Chief Executive of the British Retailers Consortium.
Thanks. Good morning, everybody. He is not making it up. We've literally, David and I flew in this morning, so this is my first trip to Jersey, and it's a real honour to be here. And I haven't even been here an hour yet. So, and with a build-up like that, and having got up at 4:30 this morning, I hope I can even begin to live up to some of that expectation. But I think it's a real, as I say, an honour to be here, because I think it's a really exciting time seeing what's going on, this event, the work that James has done in putting it up, getting it up and running, the work over the last couple of years of the Jersey Retail Association, of David, of Laurie, of the board, of others, and in the lead up to the setting of the retail strategy. So it is indeed an exciting time, with also the support from government. And where's the Senator gone? I've lost him, his face. I did meet him just about 2 minutes ago. He's over there. So the support of Lyndon in providing some of the funding to get the JRA off the ground. So it is a real pleasure. And it was just over a year ago that I think Laurie met some of our team at the BRC and talked about the JRA becoming members of the BRC. And it was kind of one of those questions we sort of thought, well, I hadn't really thought about that before. So here we are a year later, and I hope that you're getting some benefit out of that membership. So what I wanted to do today was to talk about three things. That's one of the things I learnt from Ian Cheshire, who was my first chairman at the BRC. He said, you've got to do speeches, you've always got to do three things. So three things we're going to cover. So firstly, I just want to touch very briefly, if you'll allow, just on the BRC, who we are and what we do. Secondly, I just want to think for a minute about retail and how important it is to, not from my perspective, I spend lots of time talking about its importance to the British economy, but here the importance to the Jersey economy. And then thirdly, really think about set the question as to whether we are in Armageddon retail or reinvention retail, because certainly from lots of the headlines that you might read, the tendency is to think about the Armageddon scenario, whereas actually I want to explore some of the themes about the future that perhaps we can all be optimistic about. So to kick off and just give you a little bit about the BRC. This is our mission, to make a positive difference to the retail industry and the customers it serves, both today and in the future. Very highfalutin sort of mission we've got there, but really what that translates into is two things. The first thing is being the voice of the industry. So telling the story of the transformation that is underway, promoting and at sometimes protecting, when the industry is under fire, the reputation of retail. So that voice, having a place where there is somebody out there that can respond on behalf of the industry, I think is a really important place for us to be. And then secondly, it's all about using the input from across our membership really to influence the economic and the policy environment that helps retailers to thrive and even survive in throughout this period of transformation. And the key really for any trade association is to be able to do those things which are all great on behalf of the industry, to do them in a way that adds value back into the individual companies that are members. So I encourage the JRA to make sure that they are making use of their membership through the sort of the insight, the knowledge, the networks that are there and that are available, and that can take many different forms, from data and insight and ability for people to be able to benchmark the performance of their business, right through to operational support on up and coming topics, everything from what have we had recently, diversity and inclusion, to plastics, to Brexit. I've been here for a whole 5 minutes and I haven't mentioned that horrible B word, to property and taxes, and all of those things. That information and that guidance is available, and we do that through, we have various role-based communities, so based on the functions of retail businesses, and people connecting to those communities and draw down the things that are hopefully of use to them. And it was in preparing for this morning, I thought I'd better do some homework. Seeing everybody said that I was going to be on first up at this important conference, to look at the importance of the industry to the Jersey economy. And I expect even that there are lots of people in this room who, like me, have worked in the industry, and I'm bang slap in Murray's 25 years of experience, wherever he's gone, I'm right at that average level, who kind of think that often the industry is undervalued and sometimes taken for granted. And I think what this slide highlights is, just the importance, firstly, to the economy. So, over 1,000 businesses here in Jersey, nearly 8,000 people employed. 80% of those, as I understand from my homework, are in businesses that are small, so less than that 1 to 5 business, so the real community aspect of those businesses. And the £720 million worth of sales, with all the sort of knock-on effects of supply chains and logistics and work that is connected to the industry itself, is a contribution of £280 million to the local economy. So while it isn't the biggest industry in this island, it is obviously one that is really, really important to the economy. But I think when we're talking about the industry's contribution to the economy, we sort of forget its wider social contribution. And, again, I think you're going to know all these statistics better than me, but I think there's about 100,000 people who live in Jersey, and pretty much most of those people will be interacting in some way with a retail business pretty much every single day in their local community or here in St Helier, and with 4 times that number as tourists coming to visit, then often those interactions are part of what they will remember about their visit to this island. And I think the contribution to local jobs, often entry-level jobs, often for people that don't have lots and lots of qualifications, an industry that gives many of those people the opportunity to progress in their businesses. And I think we should be really proud that retail is probably, I believe, one of the most meritocratic industries that exist at all, full stop. David was telling me the story of, on the plane of, at the airport, of what his teacher said when he told him that he was going to work in retail, and it wasn't an enthusiastic, supportive response. But I think David's story, like I'm sure many others, will really reflect how it is possible to go from the shop floor to the boardroom within the industry. And I think, particularly with what's going on at the moment, it is, without any doubt, a fast-moving and, at times challenging, but also an exciting and innovative industry. So we should not underestimate it, we should not undervalue it, and we should all be proud of what that contribution that the industry makes, not just to the economy, but also to the sort of the very fabric of our society. So, back to that question as to which trajectory we are in fact on, Armageddon or reinvention. And I certainly think that we are at a reset moment, and as I said earlier, I think you would definitely be forgiven for believing, particularly if you don't know the industry, if you just focused on what you read in the papers, that we would be firmly in Armageddon territory. And it's at this point I kind of sort of look at the audience and I sort of go, shall I ask them the question? Shall we do the vote? Because it's like a high risk sort of strategy. But I'm looking around, there's some sort of fairly smiley faces, so I think I'm gonna ask, and you're not allowed to sort of not vote, okay? You have to sort of say one or the other. So I will say Armageddon. You put your hand up, and if you don't put your hand up first time, then if I say reinvention, then you have to put your hand up. That's okay. So I guess my question to you before we go any further is: so are we in Armageddon retail? 1, 2, 3. Okay, right. Versus reinvention retail. Right. Okay. Right, I hope everybody's remembered who the 3 people are, because we've got to come back and see if we've converted them by the end of the day. Certainly, we are at that reset moment, I think. I often describe it as a perfect storm where we have the interaction of new technology, and just technology generally, fundamentally changing the way that people shop, lots of rising costs for retail businesses, and softening demand across the piece. And it is the coming together of those 3 things that I think is creating this perfect storm. And I do think that the consequences of that in many places, so coming back to the sort of Armageddon versus reinvention point, are very significant and very severe. So across the UK, there are about 3.1 million people who work in the retail industry, and that is nearly 100,000 fewer than it was at the same time last year. So job losses, store closures, over, I think the statistics are around 4,000 administrations in the last couple of years, various CVA processes, company voluntary arrangements, more media debate about whether there are others in the pipeline. And so I don't want to appear to be underplaying the significance of the impact of some of those things, particularly, again, coming back to the community point, on parts of certainly the UK, and we can perhaps talk later about what's happening here, but certainly in parts of the UK where vacancy rates are over 20-30% in terms of shop space and how it is used, where many of those job losses have occurred, and that it is in fact the most vulnerable, already most vulnerable, and the more economically deprived, where some of that impact is being felt hardest. And I think I'll come on at the end to talk about where the industry and government need to sort of think more innovatively together about how to make sure some of that transformation is actually occurring in a good way as opposed to a bad way. But for now, what I want to really take us into the sort of the space of themes for the future. So I'm going to touch on a number of these, and because I've only got 25 minutes in total, I'm really this is going to be a sort of whistle-stop tour of just a couple of these rather than delving into any of the detail, but I just put them out there for discussion perhaps later on. The first is about online sales. So again, I'm using some UK statistics, but back in 2006, online sales were less than 3% of retail sales. Today, they are nearly 20% of retail sales. And who knows what number that will grow to. Certainly, it is still growing. It might be growing a little bit less slowly than it was before, but it's still sort of between 8 and 10% a year-on-year growth. And we've put out that it could be up to 50% of retail sales. But actually, I don't think that's the point, because what I'm trying to show with the little graphic on the right-hand side is that actually, I think for us all, we need to stop thinking about digital and physical as being two separate things, because from a customer point of view, they don't think like that, or we don't when we're actually doing our shopping. There was some research that was undertaken, I think, by Deloitte, which said that 50% of physical retail sales are influenced in some way by digital. And it doesn't necessarily mean that transaction was done online, but it just shows the power of the interaction between mobile, social media, the role of the store, what you're actually researching on the internet, and how all of those things fit together. So I think for any retail business, the challenge of how you measure performance in a future where digital and physical become much more interconnected is going to be a really interesting challenge. But we need to stop thinking them as two separate things. The second sort of theme to touch on is about many of these emerging technologies. And if you read much of the sort of retail press, you've got everything from, I've given myself a little list here, artificial intelligence, the Internet of Things, augmented reality, virtual reality, blockchain. I mean, like, how many other things can you think of off the top of your head? There are loads. And at this moment, there are so many that are being researched, investigated, assessed, tested, and who knows, again, which ones will end up becoming reality. We might all have 3D printers in our houses in the next decade. We could be accepting our home deliveries by drone. Who knows? But I think what it means for any retail business is that you have to be agile enough to decide which things you want to try and test and be prepared to fail, because it isn't like there's going to be a sort of manual as to which one of these things is going to be the answer to all our challenges, and that that any business really needs to think about which horses it wants to back, or the areas where it wants to lead, and the areas where actually you want to follow. So if we're going to be shopping a little bit more digitally, and I think this is a real interesting question for here as to how much of this translates to Jersey, but certainly if you look across the UK, there is no doubt that there is overcapacity in retail space. That the nature of the retail space that exists, much of it is not fit for purpose anymore, and that there will be fewer retail stores. And that then raises all sorts of questions, particularly from a government point of view, about things like planning and how easy or hard it is to change the use or to reconfigure space that needs to have a slightly different purpose in the future. But what that doesn't mean is that the store is dead. The store has an even more, I think, important place in the future. And really, thinking about the role of the store and that different purpose, and it not being just a place for transactions and a sort of functional thing, but actually something much broader than that. Lots of people talk about, the retail experience, retail theatre, and I think that often is going to be part of the answer for many businesses. So what is the USP that a particular physical space has, and is it about that experience, or it might be a real convenience offer, or about fulfillment, or about service, or a showroom for a particular brand or product. But again, being clear about what that is and what the purpose, the role, the reason why someone should come into a store is all about, is going to be so critical for I think for all retail businesses in ensuring success in the future. And I suppose to follow that, the role of the store will evolve and become perhaps even more important, I think we need to think differently about our communities, our high streets. And certainly I think historically we've had a sort of high streets equals retail presumption. And I think we need to, we need to really think carefully about how we reimagine what many of those local communities will look like in the future. And I think absolutely retail will have a role to play, but we need to also think beyond retail into the broader leisure, entertainment, the reasons why people will come to a particular place, care in the community to look after the ageing population, flexible workspaces. So the whole idea that just, high street, fewer stores means the high street is dead is not the way that we should be thinking about it. It's about reimagining how those spaces can be created in a different way, because people, us all, we still want that sense of community, that sense of belonging, that sense of place, and that I think will always be there. Social media. I think it's, again, I'm generalising like hugely because of the sort of the basis of time, but often when people talk about online or digital, they're thinking about sales. But actually, I don't generally talk about individual retailers, but Primark is a classic one. It's kind of like everyone goes, how come they're so successful when they don't have an online business? They do have an online business, it just doesn't happen to involve transactions. They are really active on social media and they are engaging with their customers in the digital space. It just so happens that they haven't, or they've decided to do that in a way that doesn't involve actually the ability to make a purchase. I guess I'm just using that as an example to reinforce the power of being in that space and to use it as part of a mechanism to encourage people to a particular brand or to a particular store or to a particular product or to an experience or whatever else it might be. And my statistic on this one is that apparently 92% of people, so again we can test whether that's the same three people that disagree with this one as well, I don't know, of trust in influencers over and above adverts or celebrity endorsement. So what we are seeing or reading in much of our social media is, I think, if we all sort of took a moment to reflect, influencing our behaviour and our thinking. And then my final sort of theme is about sustainability. And as I said, I've been working within retail for about 25 years. And I can remember one of the first conferences I ever did was at Retail Week, and I was like, nervous as hell, a bit like today, really. And I was talking about social media. I was talking about sustainability as being the sort of the next thing after technology, in terms of how it was actually going to change the way that retail businesses, all businesses, actually worked. And that was kind of like 10 years ago. And I think, I'm not suggesting I was before my time or anything, but I think there is no doubt that time is now. If you think about things like the, how one program and person, David Attenborough and their Blue Planet and the plastic bottles in the ocean, can really raise up the profile of a particular issue and the sort of knock-on consequences of that. We have, I think it's 4 consultations going through the UK government at the moment around plastic taxes, deposit return schemes, so ideas, some of which are sort of probably quite good, some of which could be like really bad in terms of how they're implemented, but all things that have like raised the profile and shown the customer focus on the need to ensure that a business is operating in an ethically and environmentally sound way. And I think for any retail business, people's customers, they take it for granted. They're not, they assume, we all as customers, we assume when we're buying something for a particular brand that we're putting our trust in that brand to have made sure that what it is that we're buying wasn't made by people who were not paid properly, or that too much damage was done to the environment in producing that product. And I think that that is going to become much more of a theme in terms of how it influences people's shopping decisions as we go forward. And again, another statistic for you, so 4 in 10 of us all think sustainability is important when we're making a purchase. So I guess my message there is, we should not, if we are, any retail business, cannot afford to take for granted asking itself what it is that they are doing to ensure that if those issues do arise, how they would be handled, and whether they've got the right answers if somebody did shine the light on a particular aspect of their business or what was happening down their supply chains. So back to my sort of reset moment about Armageddon versus reinvention. I think there is a crucial role to play at that intersection as to whether we end up with a harder or a softer, to use a Brexit analogy, transformation process for the way that government and the industry actually work together. And I'm just these are little infographics, and I think you're about to talk about a much broader strategy, but there are 3 things that I've put on here that I think are like really critical to that thought process. Firstly, jobs, skills, people. I mean, we touched on it at the beginning. Retail is a people business. Large employer across the UK, the largest private sector employer here in Jersey, the second largest. How the nature of jobs are going to change on the back of the transformation that we've just been talking about. Different sorts of skills. Potentially, what this means for the nature of jobs in the industry is that actually, although there will be fewer, they will be higher paid, they'll be more customer facing, they'll potentially be more analytical and more digital, and all of that requires training, requires perhaps different skills for many of the people who already work in the industry, requires new skills for people who are coming into it, and there is a real role there for both for retailers themselves and for government in terms of what happens at schools, in colleges, as well as what training is more widely available. So I'm sure, she says confidently, that in your retail strategy there's definitely going to be something about this. I'm kind of looking at Laurie and hoping that I've got that right. And then secondly, around technology, I mean, we touched earlier on, there's all this new technology out there. There is, many retail businesses are wanting to invest in automation to make the companies more efficient. But the tax and the economic environment need to be right to facilitate and to enable that to happen. So to incentivize the ability to invest in the right place. And again, that's where the partnership, the conversation between governments and industry is so important. And all of that and any decisions have got to be based on real data and evidence to be able to support those decisions and to test whether or not any decisions that are taken are the right ones. And I think, again, in the work that you're doing on the strategy, there's surveys that's been undertaken. You're collecting data on sales and on footfall. So having that evidence base is absolutely vital. And I don't want to teach granny and sucking eggs, but I thought I'd finish with a slide that just reminds everybody of the obvious. It was, I think it was, I remember, who was it? I think it was Stuart Rose speaking at some conference, and he said the customer, retailers, we used to say the customer is king. It's not true anymore. They're the goddamn superpower. And I think he was whether he nicked it from someone else, knowing Stuart, maybe he did, but he was completely right. If you think back over the decades of retail history, 50 years ago, it was the suppliers that were in charge. They were the ones who, had the products that people wanted in their houses, and then over the course of the next 20 years, retailers came in and actually opened shop, gave them access to those products, and opened huge amounts of space, developed those propositions. The retailer, those were the glory days of retail, when you actually could make money selling things to people. And then here we are today with a real, the challenge of that transformation ongoing. But actually, if you look back over that history, we've had the rise of the supermarket, the growth of out of town, the creation of the internet, and all through each of those, the industry has shown its resilience and the sheer determination of retailers to get through and to thrive and survive and to thrive through those periods of change. And while there is much debate about whether it is a revolution or an evolution, I think we just need to see what's happening at the moment as just another one of those. And if we are focusing on what it is that the customer is looking for, then there is a real route to success. And with that, I wish you well in whatever journey that might look like. Thank you.
It's so lovely when a microphone doesn't work. That makes life so much better. Okay, I'll try another one here. That one will work.
Oh.
There we go. That's a little bit more like it. Helen, thank you very much indeed. I'm so pleased you finished on that slide there. A life-changing book for me was called Crowning the Customer. Crowning the Customer. So it was saying the customer is king. It was written by an Irish retailer. It was a brilliant book. We've got time for about 10 minutes of questions with Helen right now on what Helen has just presented. So we can open that up to the floor. So if there is anyone who's got questions right at this moment, then I'm quite happy to take those now. Anyone got a question, raise your hand and we'll get to you as quickly as possible. One right at the back, which is perfect. Excellent. You could shout, but I'll come down with the microphone. There we go.
Hello, Helen. I think you said, I'm just checking, that there was 3.1 million people UK in retail employment. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, which is, I'm not a great mathematician, not a great scholar. That's about 5% of the population. And I think it also showed a slide where 8% of Jersey population were employed in retail. So my poor maths shows it's actually far more important to Jersey that retail succeeds than perhaps even in the UK.
Can't argue with your maths. I did used to be an accountant once. I think it's vaguely right, even without my calculator.
All right, that's more of a point than a question. Graham?
Thanks, Helen. Excellent speech. Really enjoyed it. You talked about the high street in terms of think beyond retail, think in terms of experience, think in terms of social, think in terms of community. You will have seen in the UK, presumably, areas that have embraced that and areas that perhaps haven't. And I'm intrigued to know what the difference is in those that have embraced it well and succeeded.
Great.
And what were the levers that made the difference?
Great question. I think one word in summary: partnerships. So I think that what is the thing that always comes up, sort of bubbles up when you're looking at, things like, I don't know if you've seen the Great British High Street competition, where they have looked across examples of where people have gone through that reinvention process in particular areas, and the differentiating factor between all of them and areas where it isn't happening is that where there is a bunch of people who care about their local community, and they are from different bits as different stakeholders, so particularly the local authority, really important to have the local authority involved, but also retail businesses, leisure businesses, other players, and they get together and they think about that place, as opposed to just operating with their own perspectives and having a view as to what it is that would encourage people to come, and then working together to be able to achieve that. And the really hard thing is that there isn't a one size fits all on what that answer looks like, but it's the partnership that is the thing that will differentiate those that achieve it and those that don't.
Gerald?
Thank you, Helen. To what extent do you think that retailers funded by private equity businesses are skewing the retail market?
Right, how long have we got? What do you mean by skewing, Gerald?
Well, all these loss-making retailers, mainly based on internet sales, they, of course, what it's doing, it's helping to drive down prices and profitability at the same time when the consumer is also reducing expenditure, which is accentuating the oversupply of space.
Yeah. I think, whether it's private equity, whether it's landlords being greedy, how many landlords in the room? Whether it's the visibility of the internet in terms of pricing, I think all of those things, ownership structures, legacy issues, pension schemes, lots of retail companies that maybe have been fairly high profile over the last few months, they've had challenges around that. I think it isn't one thing. I think it's the combination of all of those things coming together, if you like. Almost that's back to the sort of the perfect storm analogy. I'm not sure I've quite answered your question. Better not. How many people from private equity in the room? I bet you don't know.
Any further questions we've got? One final question from me. Small businesses, they make up a great part of the Jersey economy. Figures banded around is about 70%, 1 to 5. Is it easier for small retailers or large retailers? You'd think with the economy of size, large retailers should squish all small retailers. It doesn't seem to happen. How do small retailers survive?
The first thing to say is I think that diversity rules. So that, we need large businesses and we need small businesses because often larger businesses are drivers of footfall, reasons why people would come, and then once they're there, they will often come to some of the smaller businesses. So I think we shouldn't again. It's a bit like digital and physical. We shouldn't think of them as competing with each other. They are mutually reinforcing. I think that both come with their challenges. If you talk to a Marks and Spencer's or a Debenhams or somebody, they are really trying to move a tanker. And in a world where you need that agility, moving tankers is quite hard. And yet, on the other hand, if you're a small business, I think it's also quite hard, because if you're, you've got a cost base to manage, and a person is could be 20-30% of your workforce, and it's kind of like you can't just take one person out or put another person in just like that. So I think they all come with their unique challenges. She says, another duck, another successful duck.
There's a question from
is there?
from our president.
Hi Helen, thank you very much. A really, really interesting speech. I'd be interested in your thoughts around the deregulation of Sunday trading as it happened in the UK. We are still regulated here in that 30 of our retailers on the island aren't allowed to open by law, other than 6 Sundays every year. There's quite a split in our membership in terms of those who are in favour of that and those that aren't. The argument around it's going to be 6 days trading in 7 days comes out, whereas actually there was a survey, 68% of people on the street want Sunday trading. So I'm just interested in your thoughts around...
I nearly did it, David. I nearly got to the end without getting asked a really political question.
Whether actually, before deregulation happened in the UK, and then the attitude changed after, or it didn't, was it a good thing? Would you have recommended we should have stayed where we were?
Well, if you remember, because Sunday trading, further deregulation in the UK has been a subject of debate over the last, I think it was about 5 years ago. It was David Cameron who went, we're going to deregulate further Sunday trading, and then he waited for the groundswell of cheers from the retailers to go beyond the 6 hours that they, the larger ones that they already had, and that he didn't get it, which was interesting. So actually that's a bad sort of lead in to my answer to the question. But I think that again, it does come back to this. I think you've got, and again, you'll know much more about this than me, but you've got a unique position here, particularly in St Helier, because it's a real tourist destination, and therefore I think you've got they're here 7 days a week. They're not only here 5 or 6 days a week. So what it is that they're looking for as part of their visit, I think, should be a key part to what the answer to the question is. And like any retail question, there is never, you're a competitive lot, right? Nobody's ever going to always agree on everything. So sometimes you've just got to give it a try, see what happens, get behind it, which I think is really important. And then if it's successful, and I think, it may be marginal benefit here because you've got tourists that potentially have got money in their pockets to spend. So it's not about getting the same amount of money out of the people who already live here spread over a different period of time.
There is more opportunity for more questions because we will have Helen sitting on the panel towards the end of this morning, so another chance for more questions, and you can run them across the whole panel at that point. But for the moment, will you please thank Helen Dickinson. So, first one down, and a few more speeches to go, and then more Q&A to come. So that's where we are at the moment. We've done the Q&A, and we're moving on from there. I was reminded of a joke earlier on, and I'm not sure if I should tell it or not, but how many traditional shopkeepers does it take to change a light bulb? Of course, the answer to that is, why would you change it? I knew it would get a sharp intake of breath. It's controversial. Let's move on from that to change. And let's introduce our next presentation, our next speaker. And I'll get Mike to explain who they are and why they've been brought in. But Mike Evans is a retail strategist, as you can see, with the retail group. Will you please welcome Mike Evans?
Follow that, as they say. The good thing about coming up second is that you can go, right, well, my half an hour has just been reduced to 10 minutes because Helen's nicked all my lines. But anyway, and on that note, I'll have to wing it. Right, which of course, as Paul will say, is fatal if I start winging it because I'll still be here. Do I need to speak? point, talk, microphone. People can't hear me. Right, go on. I'm going to bring that over here. The problem with this microphone is I tend to move around a bit. Okay, I'll quickly get on with the intro. Hope that something's going to work. That's us. Jersey Retail Development Strategy. So we have been tasked with finalising the Jersey Retail Development Strategy, and today with no clicks, one click, I'm going to just try and stick to my allocated time, which is not something I'm very good at. Quick introduction to us, why we got the gig. Background to the project, I'm also going to talk about consumer retail trends, but I'm going to whiz through those because Helen's done them, and I'm going to talk about what it means for town centres and places, and hopefully answer some of the questions that have already been asked, and then just come on to what's coming through from the work we've had the chance to do so far in not much more than 2 weeks. To sort of talk about the emerging themes that we're seeing as being pertinent to the future retail strategy for St Helier and Jersey. And then just quickly come on to what we're doing next in the next couple of weeks before we're tasked with giving our report in. Funny enough, that 25 years bit sort of seems to fit, except that this year is the 25th year of the retail group being under my stewardship, or mine and Paul's stewardship. I'm a little bit longer in the tooth. I beat the average by some way for being an active retailer, and I still introduce myself as a glorified shopkeeper at parties because it's much easier to say that than say I'm a consultant. Anyway, right. Actually, I probably should do a bit more. We've had 25 years of running a consultancy. This is purely about understanding these people, the consumer. Thank you very much. Give us that and I can dispense with this one. Just to give you an idea of how fickle consumers are, and I know that there's a research specialist in the room, so I'm going to be very quiet on this one. And that. Right. We used to, about 10 years ago, when we did shopper surveys in town centres and city centres, first question was, are you shopping today? And all the people that said no then didn't get asked the rest of the survey. I get a phone call from the field company one time saying, oh Mike, we've made a bit of a cock-up. We've asked all the no people the rest of the questionnaire. And I went, okay, that could be interesting. Let us know what they said. So the 97% of the people who said no, they are not shopping, then went on to say that they'd been to Boots, M&S, Smiths, told us what they'd spent, what they bought. So the learning point for me was two things. Going back to my roots as a retailer, retailing is about temptation. If you've got the footfall passing your shop window, passing your business, then you've got the chance to tempt some money out of their pocket. And so just because people think they're there to go to the council, think they're there to have their hair done, think they're there to go and go for lunch, whatever else they're doing, if they're there, you have the chance for that temptation. So, consumers in places, in town centres, for whatever reason, are vitally important. And you'll hear in a minute we come on to talk about multi-purpose places. Town centres no longer just being about retail, but about being multi-purpose. And it's those multi-purpose places that are succeeding. And it's those places that understand they have multi-purpose customers. So it's not just shoppers, it's workers, students, visitors, tourists. They're all different customer groups. And the more you understand about them, the better chance of success you have. And here endeth the lecture. Right, so we still work for retailers. We help retailers improve their business, big and small. It's always easier to put up the big brand names. Slight example there. We've always thought that retailing was much more than just traditional shops. So our retail clients include people like Toyota, include people like Kodak, Unilever. These are all businesses where we've helped them improve their retail performance, retail ability. More interesting for me is just before Christmas, we helped 10 independent businesses in Gravesend It's on the North Kent coast. It doesn't have any of the attributes of St Helier, but we, trust me, I used to live there. I used to run the BHS there when God was a boy. So anyway, right, we go round and forth. So 10 small independent businesses. One guy used to have a market stall. He now has 3 shops on their little high street. Him and his partner, and here's a business that's really latched on to the customer psyche. He opened a tea shop, as in tea, cake, etc., etc. Then he opened a cake making shop next door, and out the back of both those shops, he now has a separate business which is about experience. They run cake making classes, chocolate making classes, cake decorating classes, and he said he makes more money out of the experience businesses than he does at the front. But he couldn't have the experience businesses without the front. Right? So, and that's coming back to the question about what's easier for small or large businesses. This is a youngish guy, had a stall on a market, and he's grown that in over a 5-year period to have these 3 other businesses. All about understanding his customer. So I'm happier helping him and his 9 other businesses. We ran 2 1.5-hour training sessions for them. Not a glorious title, Improving Product Presentation. Improving Product Presentation. The 10 businesses went away with 61 actions that they were going they were actions they'd identified about how they could improve their turnover. We can get to that granular level. Paul's pointing at his clock. Probably more relevant is that we develop strategies and action plans for lots of different places around the country. We're quite shameless as consultants. We'll work in town, edge of town, out of town, new town, regional shopping mall. We so long as people pay us, we're quite happy to work for them. It's sad, but anyway. We've just worked on a project in Perth, helping them to... Perth's a nice city with a nice retail offer, and they're fairly happy with what they got. But somebody said, hang on a minute, our customer base is about to change. We are the fastest growing city in Scotland. So with that in mind, what needs to happen to our city centre offer? And they said, we've got some nice everyday shops, but shouldn't we have something a bit better quality? Shouldn't we have bigger stores? And we actually came back and said, actually, you probably should be looking at how do you integrate your arts offer, your culture offer. You've spent a fortune on creating a really nice new theatre, but it's not connecting to the rest of the retail offer. How are you sharing this footfall? You've also got this horrible car park, this open air car park, which everybody hates. Why don't you use that to create some new city centre space? I stopped short of saying retail because it was broader. In Windsor, we've been helping Windsor grow, and Windsor's quite an interesting place because it's sort of heavily constricted. It's got this thing called the castle on one side, it's got this thing called the river, and then it's got the grounds of the castle, so they can't actually grow physically their town centre, but we've helped them to actually bring in different brands. You know, they now have one of the best performing Zara's in the south. They managed to squeeze in a Waitrose by putting it on the first floor when Waitrose said we don't do first floor, but they did in Windsor. They wanted to be there. And then Catterick, a former garrison town, which they built some new retail space and they couldn't fill it with anybody, and we helped to produce the information to attract the retailers to go there. And one of the things that we do understand is what sort of information do you need to use to promote your place to new businesses? And I think that's something that Jersey, St Helier certainly has the opportunity to do, is to understand what is the right information we should be using, and also who are the right people we should be looking to target. Background to the project. I said we've been tasked with finalising the retail strategy development. Because there's been a huge amount of work already done, huge amount. You know, we've been given reports, memos, letters from interested people that go back 2 years. We're still digesting them. So the fact that 26 people have been very happy to see Paul and myself, mainly him, over the last couple of weeks, we think is great testament to the fact that just how interested people are in the retail offer. Because in other places we'd have been politely told to go away. We've done all this, we've given all the info, just absorb it. So what is a retail development strategy? And true form, we use the internet to come up with a definition. A series of actions to achieve specific goals and or a long-term overall aim. And actually what was interesting from the document we were given as the draft, it sort of missed that long-term overall aim. It missed that vision. It missed that, what are we looking to be? What do we want to be? So Paul and I set ourselves the target of coming up with that. I'm not going to tell you that answer today. We're still working on it. Why do we need one? Okay, why do we need one? Comes back to one of the points that Helen said. We need one to deliver, sorry, it's quite far down the screen, to help us deliver the right offer, the right mix, the right experience for our customers. It's to retain and grow that customer use. The other reason to have one, it gives a collective aim, a collective vision about how we work together. And certainly the towns that we've been working with and on, the ones that are succeeding, have that vision, have that plan, but also have a group that drives it forward. We've worked on plenty of towns, we've produced lots of strategies where I can say they've sat on the shelf. One town on the northern fringes of London, spent their money with us, and 2.5 years later, nothing has happened. Heaven forbid. Right, progress. We've met with lots of people. We've spoken to lots of people. We've felt the passion. We've felt the interest. We have felt the frustration. We've captured a whole host of views. We're digesting those. We've done some of our own objective review and critique. We'll share some of that with you. We're looking at a whole chunk of info. We've been given info from the government, from the states. We've been given info from tourism. I saw, hello again. We've been given third-party info. We've got views of retailers. So there's still a whole mass to digest, shall we say. But, become bullet point 4, it's really for us about understanding the various customer groups and what they want. Not necessarily what they express they want, but our interpretation of what they might want. And then really starting to move on with some emerging themes which we're going to share with you today. I'm going to whiz through some of this because this is the bit that Helen nicked. Bless her. Right, okay. But I think there are some, and I thought, right, I'll focus in on the bits that really I want to emphasise. Right, okay. Fortunately, we share an information source. We look at Deloitte reports as well. Interestingly, Deloitte's tell us that consumers are still going to shops. Yippee. 85% of them still regularly go to shops. Now, I'm an old guy, so I still go to shops because I don't, the interweb, very scary. But I've got these people called daughters, right? Now, and they are avid interweb shoppers, but they're also avid go to Bluewater, go to Tunbridge Wells. They even go to Crawley. Now, trust me, nobody wants to go to Crawley, but my daughters will go to Crawley to go to New Look, right? And they'll go to Bluewater because they want to go to Victoria's Secrets, or they'll go, so they'll go, even though we get daily deliveries from ASOS, Pretty Little Things, Dirty Little Things, whatever the other horrendous title is. Actually, maybe that's me that gets the dirty. Anyway, right, I wish. Right, so, hush. I didn't say that loud. I did, right. Okay. But the other thing is shopping around is an established behaviour. Right? Shopping around. For whatever reason, over the last 10 years, we've been allowed to seek value. Right? We've been allowed to seek value. Now, John Lewis, bless them, have for years said never knowingly undersold. For years they've said that. But it's only in the most recent results that they are saying those customers are taking us at our word and they're making us honour it. But it's only now that people are even forcing the mighty John Lewis to follow their strapline. So even the great and the good, who are the John Lewis shoppers, have identified they're allowed to shop around. So I think that there is a clear, some of these I'm not going to go back through, But the bottom one is interesting. People are choosing to go shopping or to go to places for more than just the range of retail that's on offer. Okay. My wife will go to Blue Water. It's half an hour drive from us, and depending on what time of the day, you can queue another half an hour just to get into the car park, right? But she's quite happy to sit on the A2 for half an hour, waiting to get into Blue Water because the reward is enormous. So the effort might be big, but the reward is enormous. She will not queue to pay at Tesco Metro, right? Because the reward isn't big enough, right? So no reward, zero effort. Big reward, we're prepared to have a bit of an effort, right? Now, parking at Pier Road car park. Can I do this one? Have we got time? Trust me, that's way too much effort, right? There's no, and also there is no evidence of reward. Once you've made the effort, right? Once you've made the effort, you come out and you go, wow, this looks scruffy. Where am I? Oh, shops. Probably they're down there. There's no sign saying, this way. We've got this fantastic department store. Actually, we've got two. It's over here. This is happening this week. Come and eat here. There's no information. There's not even any information about how much it's going to cost to pay to park. Anyway, right. So when we talk about experience, we're not talking about jugglers and fire eaters and stilt walkers. Well, we might be occasionally. But let's just get the basics right. Also, the pavement on the way down is too narrow for two big guys to walk side by side with a wheelie bag. Right? So therefore, it's too narrow for anybody to go with a shopping trolley, a pram, or with children arm in arm. So sort the pavements out as well. Right, anyway. You can get where I'm going. Right, so retail trends, age of retail Darwinism, that's where we're at. Survival of the fittest. On a macro scale, and it will be on a micro scale within St Helier, within Jersey. Survival of the fittest. New players on the scene. Who on earth thought that people would open shops selling pods of coffee? Right? Who on earth thought that John Lewis would have a shop at St Pancras railway station? 10 years ago, if I'd have put my, I wouldn't have even got odds. Never mind Betfair. Right. So the other thing, retailers are diversifying in what sort of format shops they will open, not just the multi-channel, but the size of shops. You've got big brands opening small shops, and then you've got Primark in Birmingham converting what used to be a shopping centre into a single store. Right? A single store. So I think that there's just a variety. We shouldn't just assume that retailers aren't opening. They are. And quality brands are expanding. It's not just the value end of the market. What is the new multi-channel? It isn't just clicks versus bricks. Multi-channel is phone, click and collect, online. It's out of town, edge of town, in town. There's a whole raft of things. But the smart retailers are treating the different channels as exactly that, another opportunity to sell something. It's only competition if you're not in the game. Service experience is key. Now, I know that one of the 6 themes within the strategy is about retail skills and service, and that's fantastic because that is as good as everybody loves apple pie, votes for Christmas and loves their mum. Right? And that's great. There's no harm in that. But the opposite of that is in the good old days, there used to be this shop called Woolworths. Many of you won't remember because you're too young. Right? Now, Woolworths, I remember going into Woolworths and there was Doris on the till. Said Doris, right? And underneath Doris it said, "This is customer service week." Doris smiled at me. I handed over the money. I thought, what happens on the other 51 weeks of the year? Right? Customer service is not a promotional tool. It's a way of life. Right, okay. Did I say about juggling and stilts? Oh. Right, and here we go. multi-purpose centres. These are all classic photos from previous projects we've worked on. Leeds Shopping Plaza doesn't look like this anymore. It's now called Trinity in Leeds. It's got the sexiest food court in the city called Trinity Kitchen. They nicked the idea from New York. Right? Google it. Go take a look. It's the busiest food eating area. Looks like a load of independents, but actually they're small, multiple businesses. Well done. Peacock Shopping, Woking, town where I used to have a shop when I was a proper shopkeeper. Never made any money, but such is life. In that shop, fortunately we made loads in Windsor. Doesn't look like that anymore. I'll show you a picture in a moment. Fort Kinnaird. I don't think Paul had a beard when he took that photo. Huge, bulky goods out of town retail park. Now, one of the biggest fashion parks. The owner of Fort Kinnaird, a very bright property guy, I won't mention his name. When we told him, when we first did a piece of work, we said, problem with this is you've got no coffee shops. And he said, nobody buys coffee at retail parks. Even the power store here has a very nice coffee shop. Croydon, unfortunately, probably still looks a bit like that, but they're waiting to knock it down. Right, on a more serious note, multifunctionality is in. You'll probably know Southampton West Quay. This is the new box that they built next door to the rather nice shopping centre. This box has got something like 20 F&B units. It's got a multi-screen cinema. It's got the bowling alley. Southampton, like lots of South Coast towns, completely bombed out in the war. Not really much in the way of nice sort of urban public realm. But what they very cleverly did is they put the catering units to face the old city wall. So they've made use of what they've got. Blackburn, town where up in the northwest, which was the winner of the Great British High Street Award, overall competition. Very small consultancy has done lots of research there. And yes, we will try and take the credit. But Blackburn, 15 years ago, we worked on a project for Blackburn where the council would have collectively given me their right arm if they could attract Pizza Express. That was 15 years ago. And we said, good idea, but you've got nowhere to put them. Those sorts of food people like to cluster. They've now built Cathedral Quarter next door, surprisingly, to the cathedral. Put a small office there, very nice hotel, a very nice boutique hotel called Premier Inn, which trades at about 95% occupancy. Trades its socks off, and you can't book a room. They wish they built a bigger one. Interestingly, they built 5 F&B units. They've now got the most northernmost outpost of Turtle Bay. They've got a regional Italian restaurant and Starbucks, first Starbucks they had in the town. They've got the local Michelin-starred restaurant owner from up in the hills overlooking Blackburn has opened a cafe in the Cathedral Refectory. Trades exceptionally well, attracts this very nice middle market white-collar resident that Blackburn didn't think it had, but they found them now. And the point of that is these are all adding additional layers. They're all in the town centre. So what does this mean? A slight skew on the slide here. Successful town centres will have multiple reasons to visit. Adapting to changing consumer behaviour is essential. And to do that, to adapt to that consumer, you have to understand your customers. You have to know as much as you can about them. And the good thing, and the best thing is to share that understanding. Share that understanding. It used to be that the shopping centre owner, the major landlord, used to be the person that did all the research, and they used to keep it. Now, so many town and city centres are now managed by bids, and it's a fantastic model where the bid produces the plan for the location. People contribute hard cash; they're forced to. It's a levy on the business rates, but they have to vote to do it. but it means that you have a team that are dedicated to promoting that town and a team that are dedicated to improving the performance of that town for the benefit of the consumers and the operators in that town. We just did a survey on another, we do lots of surveys for bids, and we've just done one in a major south coast city. I won't mention where. Another one at south where they got completely bombed out. It wasn't Southampton, and that city apparently doesn't trade on a Sunday, but 43% of the 190 businesses that took part in our survey told us that Sunday was their second best day. I think that a few of the other businesses, when they see that research, might want to open on a Sunday. But anyway, that's a different story. They also have a big problem in that town, that they have 5 million tourist visitors who get to a point that's half a mile away from the city centre, but there's nothing at the tourist destination that says, oh, and we have shops this way. Right? So even, lots of places still getting some basics wrong. Content needs to change. What makes up? What makes up? What goes into the content will need to change. It is changing. Right now, you only have to look at and that's not new. Content for town centres changing. That is back to we're evolving. We're not Armageddoning. So, and content will change and continue to change. There's a huge growth in personal care. There's a huge growth in hair, beauty, blow-dry salons, nails, eyebrows, and that's just for the blokes, let alone what's going to happen for women. Right? So there's a huge... Sorry, Paul's heard that one before. Right. Lots of city centres have the wrong type of space. It's a bit like the old gag, oh, if you want to get there, you don't want to start from here, right? We've got the wrong type of space. So you can either go, oh, right, we need to build and change and get the agents to combine units and, whatever. Or you go, right, who is right for the space that we have, right? You're in a fantastic position in St Helier. You've got, somebody said, dominated by small business, 70%. Courtesy of the tourism information, we got the Collier's tourism audit, which gave us some stats on the number of retail businesses and the number of and how many of them were independent businesses. And it's about 380 out of 500. I might have the figures. I definitely got them slightly wrong, but it's that sort of level. So many places in the UK would be so envious of having such a strong, independent retail offer. You're not making the most of it. You're not boasting about it. You're not making them visible. You're not making them stand out. You're not. The place isn't proud of this independent offer. And it's in a great place. You've got right the way from 2 good independent department stores down to local businesses. It was one of the times I was here. It was pre-Valentine's Day. I bought my wife a little local made house door pottery thing. She actually liked it. I can't remember the last time that worked. Right, okay. So, it's the task of the local authority to facilitate, to facilitate the flexibility. It's about creating the environment that things can happen and can change. Places with strong local identities. Is St Helier's identity strong enough? Is it strong enough? I think it's a good question. I don't think it is strong enough. I don't think. I think we should be banging on about. Is the experience strong enough? Definitely not. Even leaving aside the Pier Road car park story, arrive at the airport. There isn't a mention of anything to do with retail. Right? And I've checked this time because it dawned on me the first couple of times. So, there's nothing. You get on the bus, come into town on the bus service, and there's nothing saying building to the retail. There's lots of time. Even in Oxford, we managed to get the park and ride buses in Oxford to at least call the bus stop outside Oxford Covered Market. So it would start to remind people that because the Oxford Covered Market is slightly less visible than yours, but yours looks like the jail. Theirs is just not visible. Right. Okay. Right. And I've already banged on about the fact that it's collaborative strategies that are going to work to help town centres going forward. Right. Oh. I might come back to this slide later on today. We've identified a number of distinct trend summaries. I'm not going to go through them. We had a quick look at this with the Retail Strategy Steering Group, and we picked on 4, and unfortunately St Helier didn't do very well. Right. This is about how ready are we for these consumer trends going forward, and you know, it's more about how do you get ready. I'm more than happy to share this slide with people. We've used it on a number of the town Blackburn that won the Great British High Street Award. We went through this exercise with them 2 years before they won the award. They hadn't sorted everything out, but it certainly helped with the thinking. Right, okay, emerging themes. I'm on it slightly over. Yeah. This is the bit they want to hear. So, okay, you might have. I might have given a bit of a preempt on this. First one, I'm being quite brave here. The retail experience is probably okay to good. Okay to good. It's not good to great. It's not good to exceptional. And to be fair, you're starting to lag behind, right? And my issue with that is that there's the sort of the St Helier urban myth, or the Jersey urban myth, that it's the off-island shopping is much nicer than on-island shopping. That's if you're a resident. If you're a visitor, it's the reverse. But anyway, right. And you know, so and if that's already the existing mindset, then the more you start to lag behind these virtual competing locations, the less appealing your offer is going to be. You're beginning to look slightly one-dimensional. Sorry. In that, you know, when we want multi-purpose, multi-dimension centres, you're beginning to look very shoppy, right? You know, where it's interesting. Walking back from the restaurant that we were recommended to go to last night, I said to Paul, I didn't realise there were so many bars and other things in and close to the town centre. So during the day, it feels very shoppy, right? So it's how do we start to merge those multiple layers? The arrival is pretty poor. I've done that one to death. Signage, routing, information. There's not enough of it, and some of it where it is probably in some strange places. It seems to be not where the footfall is. It's like, so I'm here. Where do I want to get to? And there's a sign over there. Oh no, I'm not going to bother. Right, so it's about thinking about where it's convenient for the customer. A lot of your assets are hidden, market being one. Even the department stores, in a strange way, are hidden. All these fantastic independent businesses are hidden. The harbour, the seafront, the waterfront. In other places, they'd be building on those and using them. There's apparently you've got an opera. And you've got a theatre, and yes, I know you've got a multi-screen, but where's the boutique cinema? Where's the nice little high-end cinema that I can sit in with a nice plush chair and have a nice gin and tonic and a bag of something that isn't just popcorn? We're probably being a little bit harsh here, but some of the buildings are tatty, right? And actually, they look even tattier at night when it's dark. And then you've got these strange metal poles that stick up out the pavement, and what's all that for? It's got something that should be connected to it. So we're just not making good use about that environment. It doesn't feel uplifting when you come into the town, right? And so there are lots of things that we can do to improve that. Events, we know there's a list of events, but events are a real tool to drive footfall. I go back to my Janet and John retail days, and it's a line we use frequently. There are only 2 ways you can improve your turnover. And sorry, I want to demystify it. You either sell more to the people you've already got, or you sell to more people. And ideally, if you're really cute, you do both. So one of the job is driving people into the town centre, driving the footfall, and actually your footfall figure as being down 0.1% is up compared to everybody else's. So that's holding your own, and that's an asset to build on. And bearing in mind, retailing is about temptation. We've probably covered that one. And then I've done the first one. Better facilities, absolutely. You know, and facilities is everything from car parks to toilets to lighting to seating to outside seating. You know, it's a strange one. You know, Walton Heath, Walton on Thames, Walton. There's a local district shopping centre, and you know, they have a line of restaurants where people sit outside. And when you look at the photo, you can see this row of trees, and you think, oh, that's going to be quite nice. When you turn up at the shop, and you turn up to sit outside, you're actually facing 4 lanes of traffic and the fire station. But people still sit there because it's outside and it's relatively nice, it's relatively comfortable, and there just doesn't seem to be enough of that, making that point of difference, that experience. We've talked about more reasons to visit, integrating the leisure, the services, but integrating the healthcare, integrating, making sure the workforce population has the right access, being overtly welcoming to them. Time to get off. I'm nearly there. You can listen. Right. You know, out of centre, the smaller centres, convenience anchors, because apparently, and I used this gag yesterday, but apparently there are people on Jersey that don't own cars. So therefore, they might need to shop locally, but you know. And we went to a few of them yesterday, and interestingly, all occupied, right? Occupied, trading, busy, and with a convenience mix. And then it's already been touched on about monitoring data, the right sort of data, having the information, understanding how the place is performing. When we monitor, we actually ask the businesses. We don't ask them their turnover, but we like to know how they're doing year on year. Is it customer numbers going up and down? Is it transaction values going up and down? Because there are plenty of town centres, city centres in the UK where, whilst footfall is down, the average spend is up, and that's what's driving sales performance. And so that's a very whiz through some of the emerging themes. We are fully aware that the retail development strategy needs to support the core future Jersey aspirations. There are 5 of them that we've that are identified, and the retail development strategy will, in some way, fit in all of them. Some it will fit more than others. We were already given 6 high-level themes for the retail development strategy. These emerging themes will fit under those. We might identify some others. We don't want to identify a massive list. Our task is to produce a vision, a strategy that has a collective goal and also has some actions to be delivered. Now, interestingly, there's also a bit of, actually, once you've got the actions to be delivered, who's going to deliver them? Right? And that's an interesting one in itself. Who's going to deliver them? Because the town centre management that you have at the moment is good and works well, but it's going to need much more support to be able to deliver even some of them. And then there'll be things that the states need to deliver, etc., etc. So thank you very much for your time. We will be treating all of today as research into our process. So any questions, all questions, but also all discussions, we'll be treating that as research. We always do. And just to put it in context, we've got about 2 weeks before we need to deliver a draft retail development strategy. And then, once we've done that, we can then populate and flesh out the document within a further week. So it's a fairly tight timescale.
Thank you, Mike. You know that optimism I talked about at the beginning. Thanks for cheering us up. And I'm going to open a microphone shop. Before we go any further, a few Q&As. There are bound to be some. Mike's business partner is Paul, who's going to be sitting on the panel, so there will be another opportunity to ask some more questions then. But if you've got some questions relating to this burning in your mind right now, raise a hand and we can deal with them now. You've killed them off with kindness or otherwise. We'll do it during the panel session. One question from me, and that is, you've been comparing here, or not comparing, you've been working in Jersey and noting what Jersey does or may not have.
Yeah.
You've been looking at many other towns. Are there challenges that are different here? Are there things that you look and go, do you know what? This is something we haven't seen that we've seen in lots of other places.
Short answer, no.
Fine.
Okay. The reverse of that, the solutions will be different. Right? That's the point. The solutions will need to be bespoke. Right? There is no panacea. The solutions have to be bespoke. The issues in the round, there's a few things, to do with taxation, level playing field, opening hours, Sunday trading, not extended, etc. Some of those things, there's an emphasis and a local flavour to them, clearly. But actually, in the round, and hence the time spent looking at general retail trends, so that in some ways it's to give a bit of comfort that the things that are being experienced here are relative and common and accepted. But the solutions will be bespoke.
For now, Mike, thank you very much indeed. We have a couple of very short speeches, and then we'll be taking a break, and we'll be having some coffee and some biscuits and a little bit of relaxation for a moment before we come back for the Q&A. So that is very, very shortly. Thanks to the retail group, thanks to Mike. I'm delighted to say that he is not only the DCM, and I had a different acronym to Deputy Chief Minister, he's the Minister for Economic Development, Tourism, Sport and Culture. Retail comes under his remit, so I'm delighted to welcome to the stage Senator Lyndon Farnham.
Thank you very much. Good morning all. Because the last speech overran slightly, there will be no time for difficult questions at the end of my short contribution, unfortunately. So thanks Mike. Thanks, Mike, for doing that. And actually, I'm wearing my Harrods tie today. It's a genuine Harrods tie, and I wear that for a reason, because I was a retail trainee at Harrods back in, Gerald Voisin knows what I'm going to say, back in the day, back in the 80s. It might have been the early 80s, I'm not sure.
You had more hair then.
Careful, Gerald, careful. And those were, in fact, I did a stretch there with Gerald. Whilst I was a fully fledged retail management trainee, Gerald went over and did a stint in their gift shop for a couple of months to get some experience, but he's done very well out of it. And when I said I wanted to be a politician, people laughed at me. They're not laughing now. So that's an old one. Right, look, hang on, we're getting sidetracked. So those heady days of retailing, I remember the Harrods sales when people would be queuing 10 deep around the block on the first day of the sale. They were good days. And whilst they might not return, I think there is an enormous opportunity for retail, which will always be a part of our community, our commerce, our economy. And it's incredibly important. And you've already heard about some of the emerging themes that we're going to address in the strategy from Helen. Welcome, Helen. It's great to have you here. And from Mike. Thanks, Mike. I actually had a small delegation of officers that came to me a few weeks ago and said, I think we're going to need to bring in some consultants to finish this off. I said, absolutely no way. And here they are, here today, because so much I'm listened to, but actually they're doing some great work. They're rejuvenating the what we're doing. So thanks for that. Look forward to finishing this off with you guys over the next couple of weeks. So the emerging themes that have been discussed today are opportunities for all of us to utilise, not just the real retail sector alone, but the government working together in partnership. Now that's a bit of a cliche. Somebody said, mention that loyalty is important. Well, of course loyalty is important, and that works both ways. But I have a saying, and that is never push loyalty to the point where loyal people or businesses are pushed so they no longer care. And I think actually we almost did that with the retail sector when the States Assembly, I believe prematurely, agreed to impose retail tax. It's a very difficult time on certain sectors of the industry, and I very much hope that this strategy will address how the state looks for fiscal benefit from the sector in the future. And I very much hope there will be an opportunity and the states and the Treasury will be prepared to revisit that decision when they realise it perhaps is not raising as much money as they thought in the near future. I just want to talk a little bit about retail's contribution to the Jersey economy. These are figures you all know, but I'm going to repeat them. So I'm seeing Keith there, 16 million tourist spend in 2017, 3.5 million in parking revenues, 720 million in retail sales. That's a GVA contribution of over 300 million pounds a year. 36, almost half of our goods and services tax is from the retail sector. There are over 1,000 wholesale and retail businesses in Jersey. 8,000 people employed in the industry, and the list goes on. So we all must understand how important that is to our economy. But how do we ensure that it stays at the heart of the economy? Helen and Mike have touched on those issues again. But quickly I want to say that, and this is not just about the town centre, this is about all retail in Jersey. But where retailers need to be destinations, we know that. We need to adapt to changing consumer behaviour and convenience, and we need to minimise deterrence to shoppers. And we need to understand as an island and as a state and as a government that investing in retail isn't a cost, it is an investment. Some of those figures that I just read to you I think are often lost on politicians. They don't think of that. When they look at costs, they think it's a cost and the money goes and nothing comes back. They don't understand that if we invest sensibly in this, we can make money out of it, we can get a better return, and we can improve productivity. Now that's a word, I'm not sure if in the UK everybody's talking about improving productivity at the moment, but we certainly are over here. And that's about doing more for less. We have different pressures. We have population pressures and all sorts of different things to the UK, different challenges. But we do have to improve our productivity. And again, Mike touched on that when he spoke about the differences selling more to more people or selling more to the same amount of people. And those are issues that we need to tackle. Knowledge is key. And what we need to do to be successful with this strategy is utilise all of the information knowledge that we can gain. So helping the retail sector to put together that information and share it with us is going to be essential if we are going to make this succeed. And this isn't a one-off project. This isn't producing a retail strategy and saying our job is done. This is going to be an evolving process, an ongoing process. We're talking about putting a retail board in place, a mixture of government and business representatives to scrutinise the work we're doing on the policy and to ensure it stays on track, and to keep revisiting and refreshing as time goes by. We did some work on the perception survey, we're calling it, which was done towards the end of last year. And the survey found that generally cost and convenience drove purchasing behaviour, although many shopped for the enjoyment of the experience. Those shopping in Jersey, as opposed to online or elsewhere, often did so for the speed of getting items and the convenience and the ability to test the product. Those shopping online were largely motivated to do so by cost, although convenience also had a big impact. The majority of those who took part, especially those under 44, I'm not sure why they picked my age as an average, but so be it. Gosh, I must be old to be bragging about wanting to be 44. And of course, the majority wanted Sunday trading. Now, I've already committed to taking a proposition to the Assembly for that final bit of deregulation. That will be a debate we will have. I personally support it. I know the room is probably divided, but it's a debate that we're going to need to have, and I anticipate doing that shortly after the strategy has been launched and made public. But happy before we do that to communicate or work with any of you who support it or don't support it or who just want to discuss it. So what can government do now? So all of this information has reformed this strategy. All that from that survey, a lot of that information went into the strategy. And I want to thank Chris and the team at Economic Development for putting the foundations of this strategy together now, working closely with the industry. You've all been brilliant. Chamber have been superb. Thanks, Murray, and all at Chamber. And not just Chamber, Jersey Hospitality Association, because retail cuts across our whole economy, all areas, hospitality and leisure and sport, and all areas of commerce. So we've been working together well on that. We're also going to need to talk to other stakeholders, including the landlords, parishes, and I think there needs to be a closer link with government and the States Assembly in general, and I've already talked about that. And I don't want to go on about the sort of the retail tax, but that was an example of the states making a decision without proper consultation, without the time for thought or consideration of the ramifications. And that's why this strategy has to put a mark in the ground there. So for when the states are looking at how we might get further fiscal benefits, or they're looking to balance the books, there will be a process to follow when it comes to taxing certain business sectors such as retail. So I'm keen for that to be included in the strategy. And I hope to present the strategy to the states either as a report or possibly even as a proposition, actually, that we can get the states of Jersey to agree. Because if we can succeed in doing that, that will give the strategy more weight and will encourage members to refer to it when making future decisions. Now, this is a retail development strategy. It's more than just a retail strategy. It's a development strategy for the reasons that I've already outlined earlier. And it's going to have to work in close partnership with other strategies and other government policies. For example, the New South West and Helier Plan, which is going to be consulted on shortly. The Island Plan, which is coming up, is going to be essential. It's essential. That's why the timing of the launch of the strategy, I think, is good, because it will be well placed to have a sort of front row for the Island Plan preparations that start soon, of course. And at the centre of that is our town centre regeneration plan, and that's been talked about for a long time with not a lot of action, but there is now political will to deal with that, a strong political will, not least from the parish, and Daphne's here, there she is, and I know the councillor of the parish and St Helier politicians are very keen to get this moving. So to finish, I just want to remind you of one of the 5 key themes of our government strategic plan, which was approved by the states in the middle of last year. And that says, we will create a sustainable, vibrant economy and skilled local workforce for the future. That's at the heart of our government plan. Some people have said that's impossible, but we all know the difference between the possible and the impossible lies in our determination. And I am determined. I know you are. My team, Economic Development, are. We've got work to do with other states members, but I can promise you government support, hopefully with the Treasury in the fullness of time. And I just wanted to give you our commitment to making this succeed. It's not going to be a short-term fix. Huge challenges ahead, but there are opportunities, and I think whilst being an island might have its disadvantages in terms of the cost of logistics, it also has its advantages insofar as we're surrounded by a big moat and protected, so we can do what we like here. So, no looking back, only forward. Thank you all very much for being here. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Minister. We've got Q&A with the Minister in just a second. Please, do take a chair here. I'll plug it in very shortly. We used to work together, so it's fine. I can
Work together. We used to be in the same office sometimes.
Yes.
Not my work.
I sometimes showed you where the office was. Enough banter for now. In order to respond to the Minister and indeed to the conclusions that we have, not the conclusions, but the trends that we have so far on the retail strategy, I would be delighted now to welcome the President of the Jersey Chamber of Commerce, Elliot Lincoln.
Thank you, Murray, and thank you, Minister. I just want to say a massive thank you to everyone who's turned up here. It's sometimes it's often very difficult to get busy people in the same room together. So thank you for being here. And to your point, Lyndon, we all care. I mean, you've got a room full of people who really care. But I also want to thank the government, Jersey Retail Association, Chamber. Thank you for the investment of time and energy in the process that we're going through right now. As we've heard already, Jersey's got a wonderful opportunity to be progressive and inclusive and forward-thinking in this strategy. And I say we because it's about having a collective responsibility. If we're to move forward, we need to move forward together. And it means that the will of business owners, staff, the government, parishes, hospitality, Visit Jersey, and crucially, the winning the support of customers is so important to everyone in this room. But to do this, the responsibility must be shared, and the workload and the cost has got to be shared too. Government should not expect that a one-way street of tax burdens like a 20% retail tax, like a 5% GST that we collect on behalf of the government, 6.5% contribution for social security. The cost to businesses in terms of new legislation like the family-friendly legislation, the lack of taxing online purchases, not online purchases locally, but online purchases from off the island. Lack of freedom for some of our retailers to choose whether they can trade on a Sunday or not. Lack of parking spaces in the places that our customers and our shoppers want them. And closing off roads, or the proposal to close off roads, which will add to the cost of business. And so to Lyndon's point, if government policy is to support and invest in retail, it's a win for everyone. The retailer, the customer, the tourist and the treasurer. But perhaps retail should also step up and look in the mirror too. And improve its offering. Is the customer experience that we have as good as it can be? Is the layout ideal, and are we all embracing the innovation that we should? Does the sector recognise the threats to its survival? And is this industry hungry enough to open up when people want to shop? I've got 3 questions for you. Are we prepared to look beyond our shores and take on board the tactics and strategy from other retailers? Are we prepared to look forwards to the needs of tomorrow's customers rather than what yesterday's customer demanded? And are we prepared to work together with our traditional competitors, which you're all sat next to face our collective challenges in a united front? I think these 3 things are massively important for us as an island. There's no doubt issues regarding parking availability, shopper-friendly charging, congestion, but this is one part of a bigger picture, and better measuring and thoughts on the flow of footfall, learn from others' experience, can all add to the greater sum of our retail parts. We are, I believe, at the beginning of something that will only work if meaningful support and trust between governments, our government and retailers exists. What this summit hasn't been so far is a definitive discussion on a honed retail strategy, but a report on where we are and a commitment to a process that seems finally to be going in the right direction, with the right process and an expectation for delivery. Really nice to have some emerging themes, but we need more. We need to know who's going to do what, when they're going to do it, how it's going to be paid for, and the part that each of us needs to play. And that's what I'm hoping comes out of this process. It's clear from the presentation we've seen this morning that we've reached a point where we need a step change in what it is that we offer locally, how we offer it, and possibly when we offer it, if we're to take retail forward. Clear data, helping us make the right decisions and then executing on them excellently. Retailers must ask government, what will they do to help the industry? And rightly so. But we also need to ask ourselves, what can we all do in this room to improve the retail experience in Jersey? Thank you.
Minister, you can step back up to the podium if you wish. Please do. It's Q&A time with the Deputy Chief Minister, who's the Minister for Economic Development. I'm sure you've got one or two questions before we break for coffee. Anyone got a question they want to fire to? Question time has just begun.
No, it's all clear. So.
Excellent. What's a pass? You talked about building trust between, and Elliot's just mentioned it there, between government, where you are going to support meaningfully the retail sector. How are you going to build that trust? Because I sense that in one or two sectors there has been some distrust, because no matter how much we shouted about retail tax, it still went through. No matter how much we've talked about other areas that need help, they've not happened. So how do you build that trust?
Well, a recent experience would show me that consultation is important. It's not just an exercise, a quick exercise, where you lay a paper in front of the industry and put a 2-month date on it, and if we haven't heard from anybody, then we proceed, which has happened. But I must speak up for the new government. The new government has a genuine desire to consult and confer more closely with different sectors of the community on certain important issues that will lead to new legislation. Of course, the proof of the pudding will be in the eating, but that's certainly the new target model we're going to operate to.
All right. So more consultation and more listening?
More listening, more understanding, and more realisation that actually we're not, supporting commerce and industries such as retail. It's not a cost, it's an investment. But we have to get that investment right, because this is taxpayers' money. I think we need to better understand commerce and how we can invest to help us all do better financially.
Another question that's quite topical. If you weren't going to spend £3 million as Deputy Chief Minister on closing a road to make 2 parks for 1 day for a celebration for Liberation Day, not a loaded question, how would you spend £3 million on making our retail offering better? Are there any sort of wild things that you can think of that you think, yeah, do you know what, that would be really good to put that in?
Given that we're going to spend money on all sorts of different things. Actually, this might be controversial, but I think everybody just needs to take a step back about the Liberation Square issue and get all of the facts, all of the traffic studies, and better understand it. Because arguably we could say we are long overdue for some investment in our public realm in this island. Parts of Jersey are starting to look tired, and we've got to arrest that decline fairly quickly. Now, a number of states members have addressed this particular issue, and we've all got our own shopping list of how we can better spend the money. But actually, investing in places like Liberation Square or town squares, our public domain, will actually be good for St Helier. So I'm slightly juxtaposition with you on this one. I'm not saying we should do it. We've got a short window of time to establish the facts and the potential benefits. I know I haven't answered the question, but I've given you a view. I've given you a view on the square, and I don't know what I would. You know, right now I just can't. I can't tell you what I'd spend £3 million on. But actually, if you want, you know, we're talking about building bridges to France. I think that was one of your things a few years ago, Gerald. Gerald brought that up. Building bridges to France. You know, if I had a wish, you know, because if you think it, you can do it. I'd love to be able to, when it rains, press the button and St Helier got covered. I think got covered over, so everybody could shop in the dry. That'd be good, wouldn't it?
Arcade King Street, Arcade Queen Street.
Yeah, King Street and Queen Street.
Question from Graham at the back there. Thank you, Graham. I'm on the way.
Thanks, Murray. Thanks, Murray. Keith and Visit Jersey came up with the theme of they wanted the island to love Jersey, and from that, visitors will love Jersey as well. In the theme of wanting the island to love retail, you kind of alluded there in terms of the government and the politicians, in terms of there's a number there that perhaps don't love retail or don't understand it. What more can we do to actually get them to understand the value of retail and to love retail, because it's so important to our economy? What are your thoughts?
Well, we can't. I mean, you can't write a law or make a decree that everybody shall love retail. As I think Helen said, it's, you know, that's in the hands of the retailers to a certain extent. But I allude to my previous answer. Legislators and the government have to be prepared to understand more about the benefits of this sector to the island, not just the economy. But, you know, we're not just talking about economics. We've actually, as the Minister for the Economy, I've got to be careful here, but perhaps we've put too much emphasis on growing the economy instead of making it more productive, and not emphasis on the well-being aspects of that a healthy economy contributes to. And that's, you know, the reason why we're doing an economic framework now, which will be a holistic view of all of that. But I think, again, it's down for both sectors, retail and the states and the government, to actually put some real time in to working together. It's not going to happen. We're going to have one meeting and say everything's fine, but some continued time over the next few years and working together and understanding, you know, each other's needs and requirements, because states members are all in their own way trying to do the best for the island. And of course, so there has to be a good compromise there somewhere, but it is continued working together for forevermore, pretty much.
Another question over here.
Senator,
Morning.
taking on Helen's theme of reinvention versus Armageddon,
Yes.
taking on the point that you briefly mentioned about population. Population control is obviously very important to everybody on the island, but having people to operate within a retail, hospitality and leisure sector, which has got less than 1% unemployment on the island, bearing in mind that we operate financially at the lower end of pay scales, shall we say, how are we going to actually get people to work in our businesses when there isn't actually enough people on the island to work in our businesses?
Senator, before you answer that question, hands up.
It's time up, is it?
No, it isn't. Hands up. Unfortunately, it's not. Hands up anyone here in retail or other sectors who's had difficulty recruiting somebody. Right. Well, I can understand some. So, if that's the problem, and we've seen in agriculture work permits, in hospitality work permits to allow people to come in to alleviate, what about retail?
Same thing. I mean, they're simply not sustainable for the population to continue to grow as it has done. I mean, that's not the fault of business. When you look at the situation with the EU and the changes, and I can't remember the name of the treaty in 2005, which allowed complete free movement around the EU, meant that Jersey were able to utilise labour from the whole of the EU, and it did that, of course, and that led to an explosion in our population, combined with the changes to our housing laws. We've always managed our population through legislation controlling housing and work licences. So we've seen some sort of exponential growth in our population, which is unsustainable. So from my perspective, we have to find a way of providing labour supply to the economy without it having a long-term impact on our population. If you go back some time, there used to be a 20-year residential qualifying period, so you had to live in Jersey for 20 years before you could be qualified to live here, and that reduced to 10. And then, of course, with human rights legislation, EU rules on such things, then after 5 years we had to start providing the licenses, the licensing regime didn't apply to people that had lived here for longer than 5 years. They then had to be entitled to everything that other islanders were entitled to. So it's a difficult conundrum, but I personally think that we have to utilise shorter-term work permits. And I know it's not ideal, but I think, as we're seeing in hospitality and agriculture, we bring people here for shorter periods of time. The old JCAT licence used to be for 3 years, and were 3 or 3 or 6. I think there were two versions, weren't there? And I remember, and that was quite difficult because families came here predominantly to work in the finance sector. They come here 3 years. I used to think 3 years was a long time, but of course they just get settled and their kids to school and everything they liked to hear, and then they had to go. It was difficult. So there are challenges with that, but I think in answer to the question, we have to find a position where we can bring labour in, but we have to put a ceiling on how long people can stay.
So work permits for you on shorter term. All right. Gerald, question?
Yes, one of my frustrations with the States Assembly and the Council of Ministers is this constant stream of mixed messages that we get. For example, we need to improve our productivity, but now we're being told we must allow people to have 52 weeks maternity or paternity leave. And what are you going to do to try and get the Council of Ministers following consistent policies that are going to help not just the retail sector, but all of the economic sectors in Jersey be consistent with our aim that we're trying to achieve, and not constantly have mixed messages coming and mixed policies being implemented from your colleagues on the Council of Ministers?
Yeah, thanks, Gerald. Good question. You don't get mixed messages from me, I hope. You do, and you know, Gerald, you spent 6 years, was it 6 years in the States Assembly? You spent 6 years in the States Assembly. And getting consistent messages from a group of politicians is going to be impossible, because there are those of us that we have different political agendas, different understandings. There are those of us that are more focused on the economy and economic benefit, and there are those with a much more socially minded and liberal agenda. And there are those of us that want to work in the middle and try and find some common ground. So the challenge is, the world is changing now, and it's changing, and the people we elect to our assembly, who are reflective of our society to a large extent, are now making these laws. So I would call for more engagement in politics from the business sectors. Business sectors need to be better representative in our States Assembly. They're not. There's a handful of people, a handful of elected politicians with real frontline business experience. So I would like to see more of you coming forward to stand and make some contribution to the island. That will help create a balance, I think, in these sorts of views. In relation to the family friendly legislation that's coming forward, well, it's not a case of if, being realistic, it's when and how those laws are introduced. And I'm in front of the scrutiny panel on Monday afternoon, and my views are broadly in line with the views of Chamber, and we've talked about this in detail. And I think we're going to have to try and find some sort of carve-out for the smaller businesses to help them, to give them time, to work into these new laws, which are come, whether we like it or not, whilst we have the makeup of legislature we have, they're going to happen.
You mentioned the political landscape of the Council of Ministers, a bit like herding cats, because they're all in different directions.
Mm-hmm.
would you advocate political parties in order that we could have some policy that would mean that if a collective group of politicians were elected and became the government, we would be able to know what that government was going to deliver?
I look to the UK every day and say we want to be like them. Yeah. We want parties so we can be decisive.
It's not a good example to use, I give you that.
Next question. That's a no.
But clearly it doesn't work.
I believe if the people of Jersey wanted political parties, we would have them. And political parties would be started in the island and created in the island, and they would produce parties and put people forward for election. Our political parties tend to be formed by groups of politicians who are just looking to increase their influence once they're elected, which is sort of back to front, with the exception of the Reform Party. I think, in fairness to them, they reformed the party and then stood for election, and they're actually, doing it the
you kind of
right
know
way
what
around.
you're going to get from reform, whether you agree with it or not. But with the rest,
so I don't think, like I said, if the people of Jersey wanted party politics, we would have them. I'm not in favour of them in our small island. I think we can have the best of all worlds. We're all independent politicians. We work collaboratively and collectively at times, and we get some very productive groupings, and we work like that.
with regard to family friendly there, as Gerald asked, you said carve out for small businesses. Chamber's position at the moment is very much one of, we've just had the 26-week maternity come in, and again it agrees with you in the family friendly legislation is desirable, unfortunately not practical for a lot of businesses in terms of taking 4 breaks over a 3-year period, being very, very challenging for those who are trying to backfill behind. So, with regard to family friendly, would you say that it's too early to bring this legislation in, and that after 26, we should look at the 26 weeks and the impact first, and perhaps delay this by a year?
Well, I would like to see more time for businesses to be able to adapt, so perhaps we should bring it in, we should phase it in. But then, of course, it's quite difficult. We've talked about how difficult it is, especially for smaller businesses, to attract staff. Will they be giving themselves an even greater disadvantage if people can go to bigger companies and get far better benefits?
So perhaps a 12-month delay.
So I think it's working with this, trying to sort of phase it in to give smaller businesses time to adapt. And in some instances, some assistance, some ongoing assistance.
And some understanding in population and migration to be able to employ people.
All of that.
It's somewhere. Oh, we've got one last question, and I would not like to miss this one. I'm going to introduce Mark Cox from Golf.
That's right. Lyndon, just keen.
Yeah.
So Mike talked about having sort of developed strategies previously that had gathered dust on the shelf, and one of my frustrations, I think, is that the last retail strategy, we call it that, was developed in 2010. So we're now 2019. And despite some promises, it's taken forever to get to this stage, it seems. Lots of hard work, and I'm delighted that we seem to be making progress. But it talks about partnership. I'm not sure government sort of work in partnership particularly well with the business sector. What will you be doing to try and help maintain that or improve those partnerships moving forward? And what will you be doing to make sure that this development strategy, once this arrives, doesn't gather that dust on the shelf?
Okay. Well, I've always maintained that one of the best ways we can work in partnership with industry is just by keeping out of the way and be, as minimalistic as possible. And to do that, we need to make sure that we have a legislative and regulatory framework, that is helpful to you and useful to you. In terms of the strategy itself, I think, I addressed that earlier to say we could well put in place a strategy board or policy board made up of states members and members from the industry and the sector for continued monitoring of this. I'm determined that this is not going to be one of those we produce and put it on the shelf. It can't be that, because if we do that, retail will continue to decline. So in this instance, the fact that we'll establish a group to continue to monitor and ensure that this strategy evolves, I think we'll deal with that.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you please to the Deputy Chief Minister, Mr. Lyndon Farnham. I would normally say welcome back, but you've not been anywhere, and for those who are still munching their cake, on their 5th or 6th slice, Ross, I'm not counting. So you know everyone from one end to the other. Are we missing someone? Ah, the minister. We'll put out a search party for the minister in just a second. Obviously taking an urgent phone call.
Call of nature, sorry.
No, I was so tempted to say something that I won't. So, right at the very, I won't, not at this stage. Right at the far end there, Paul Fraser from the retail strategist with the retail group and the other half professionally of Mike Evans. Although, jury's out on that one. The newly appointed Director of Customer and Care Service and Town Centre Manager just fits onto the screen, Daphne East. From there, you've already met Elliot Lincoln, President of the Jersey Chamber of Commerce. I'm delighted you've already met Helen Dickinson, Chief Executive of the British Retail Consortium. And we have, you haven't met already so far, owner of Plum Lingerie, that is Catherine Salt. And we're on the very end here, Senator Lyndon Farnham, Deputy Chief Minister. This is the panel Q&A. So all of the things that you were dying to ask before that you never got around to asking, great opportunity. Questions? Please do. Oh, by the way, the two on the very end there, Daphne and Paul, you've got microphones rather than those. They can be passed down for anyone else if you wish to. The button is switch up and then wait until you've got a yellow light. Excellent. Questions from the floor for the panel? Would anyone like to task the panel with a question? We have one already. Thank you very much indeed. I'll be leaping around. Here we go.
Are pop-ups a good way or an attractive way to regenerate the high street?
Pop-ups in the high street. Paul, take that one first.
Yes. I think absolutely. I think there needs to be more flexibility within managing retail spaces, and the days of sort of 10, 15, 20-year leases have sort of moved on. And if you've got a whacking great empty space on your high street, like the next unit, use it for move-on spaces, use it for pop-ups, use it to celebrate your local talent. There's a fantastic place in Stockton in the northeast where they've got an old town hall in the high street, and the council have basically used the space, converted it into a little mini market. So they've got lots of brand new startup traders, pop-up traders, and hopefully they will go from the pop-up shop to a permanent shop and a bigger shop and move on accordingly. So yeah, for sure.
What's stopping it?
Sorry, not me. I have to come to me, different. And maybe the minister. For me, what's the question? The problem seems to be getting landlords to allow that space to be used for that. So I get requests on a weekly basis around pop-ups, and I would love to see more, as you said, more excitement and more use as community spaces. But it's wear and tear, it's insurance, etc. And I think fully repaired leases are part of that. So actually, for the landlord to be able to allow people into that space, they need all those assurances. And sometimes for a small pop-up, that can cause difficulties. So that tends to stop it.
I'm going to pass that on to you. Pop-up shops, your field of expertise, I'm sure. Oh, you've got that.
Not my field of expertise, but as a consumer, absolutely. You know, the worst thing is to walk down the street and see empty shops, and that's not good for not good for consumers. It's not good for people who are coming to the island. I think that sort of thing. As long as it's done right, you know, I don't want to see, you know, rows and rows of charity shops or coffee shops. It's about not that there's anything wrong with charity shops or coffee shops, but it's about that. It's about variety. It's that experiential thing. It's about, you know, what could we do something differently. And one of the things for me is, you know, you walk down King Street, Queen Street. There's not many restaurants that you see certainly on the ground floor. If you want that experiential thing, you want people to come to do that sort of thing. And how does the daytime and the nighttime economy sort of knit together? So that twilight zone between sort of 5 o'clock and 7 o'clock, how do we make sure that the high street is active there? And maybe pop-up shops is part of the answer there.
I love a coffee shop, by the way. Helen, I was going to say, a pop-up shop is fine, but if a pop-up shop goes next to you, selling what you sell, but it's not paying the same rent as you, and is going to come and disrupt your market, it's probably not a good thing.
I think that's again, that comes back to how well you're giving people a reason to come to your place. So I think I think if we're going to go down, we're going to get easier answers at the start of the panel.
I'm going to shuffle it.
The only other word I would add is about the benefit of newness and building on that sort of theatre and excitement kind of theme is people like if people know that what they're going to see isn't going to be the same as what they went to see or what they experienced like last week or last month or last year, then that's another reason for people to actually come. So I think the pop-up shops is a mechanism to facilitate and enable that ongoing sort of reinvention process at a local level that drives traffic into a place, and then everybody benefits, whether you've got somebody opening next door or whatever. So the established businesses as well as the new ones.
Catherine, it's your turn. Thank you.
I actually was discussing this about pop-up shops because I'd be interested in doing a pop-up shop myself. We've got the issue that we're up at Columbury. The majority of the businesses around Columbury, or the finance interests, have all moved down the front. And come Christmas, you chaps, you're lazy devils, you're not going to go all the way from the finance industry all the way up to Columbury to buy pretty knickers and bras.
Very important at Christmas.
Very important at Christmas. Christmas, we have seen a reduction in sales. We're up a year overall, thankfully, but Christmas we have seen a change. And if there was an opportunity to run a pop-up shop, not too long, because you chaps don't shop early either, from sort of mid-November to Christmas Eve, and I'll be there till 7 o'clock if you want me to. No one comes on Sunday. Sorry, no one comes to my shop on Sundays.
Is that because the other shops are closed?
No, it's we
Get on
open.
to another subject.
Yeah, we open at Christmas on Sunday, late night opening, and Sundays. I think late night openings don't work for us because it's family time, and this is something that people will come in and buy on an individual basis. And Sundays again, people have the children. They don't necessarily want them to buy a knicker shop.
I'm going to come back and talk to you more about a small premise having a large online following in just a second. So we'll do that with you in a second, Catherine. Before all of that, Minister, in terms of pop-up shops, we've often remarked about empty shops and how it doesn't look great and how it could look better. Would pop-up shops be the answer? Would actually putting a tax on empty stores be the answer?
No.
Wouldn't it shift them quicker?
No, actually. I'll
All right.
come back to that in a second, actually. I agree with everything everybody else has said. Actually, yes, I think pop-up shops, but actually it's going to be about variety. I think local traders have got to have the opportunity to do pop-ups, Catherine, and other parts of town, but try and get different offerings. It's all about different things to bring people in.
Okay, sorry, Paul, did you want to come back on something on that?
I was just going to say, it's not just about shops. It's not just about shops as well. It's about other events. It's about giving people reasons to come into town. It's about giving people reasons to get away from the desk guy. And instead of doing that, they actually come in. They're using the facilities. They're meeting friends. They're using the restaurant. And it could be pop-up shops. It could be events. It could be visiting markets. It could be markets that take part outside the existing market. It's just about delivering that excellent experience, giving people reasons to come into St Helier.
Markets outside the existing market. I'll come back to that in just a sec, because that's a whole furrow that we're going to play. Before we do all of that, though, Catherine, who wasn't on the speakers list a little bit earlier on, I wanted to just mention about a business which is yours, which, in bricks and mortars terms, is quite a small premise.
Yes.
But in terms of online, is that a larger part of your business?
We're about 50% online, 50% in store. The online business isn't. People often ask me, "Oh, do you sell online, locally online?" And no, it's all mainly the UK, and then we send internationally as well.
That's quite a and unusual for an independent Jersey store. How do you do that?
How do I do that?
How have you done that? How has it grown the way it's grown?
Okay, so we started online, I think, I can't remember, such a long time ago. Maybe about 2009, 2010. The reason I basically got an off-the-shelf product. It cost me a few £100 to get started. And back then our suppliers weren't even keen that we were selling online, and we had to sort of argue with them. They didn't provide any photography, any descriptions, anything. We had to do all of that ourselves. But the way we managed to build it is we focused on brand rather than product or style. So we identified that our two main brands were very much, they were only available in like boutiques. If you lived somewhere where your boutique had closed down because we were at sort of the height of the recession, people immediately went online. And because we were focused on brands, we were focused on people who were repeat purchasing the same products. So we have a very, very low returns rate, which gives us a lot of flexibility because we don't have to, we don't hold stock because our supplier is very good. So we will sell something, 2-3 days later we get it down from the supplier and we send it out, which means that we can offer a huge range that if you came into our shop you think, well, where's all the stuff? Well, it's in Belgium, you know, and I buy it when I've sold it. And that's how we've done it, and we've used Google Ads, Facebook, social media to try and build that.
Interesting business model. Helen, is this something that when you were saying, shoppers don't care whether it's bricks and mortar or whether it's online, they just want to shop. Is this a model that a small jurisdiction with a smaller group of people that are not coming in from another town could work on?
I think it is. I mean, I think Catherine's story just demonstrates that, you know, there's you know, back to the sort of the fundamentals of retailing being as they always were. So you understood a customer base, you focused on what it is that they wanted, and then you were able to extend that, you know, almost to be channel agnostic and, you know, drive much more than an original business that's just focused on, you know, a particular place. So I mean, I think that's, you know, it's a great example of a real life success story of you know, how those channels work together, how social media is part of it, how you're really looking at what it is that the customer wants. So,
Daphne, sorry, come back.
The one thing I would say is when I talk about social media, that actually brings people in locally, whereas the website and Google Ads is new. And it's referring back to what Helen said earlier, that you don't have to transact online to be digital, and you don't have to, because it's not going to work for a lot of local businesses. They're too small, they're in a market that's very competitive. They may not have the margins to advertise on Google and Facebook because the prices have gone up so much in, say, the past 8-9 years. But actually, Instagram and Facebook is a way of helping them get additional traffic into their stores.
Daphne, town centre managing, you want to get footfall onto the street, you want to get people that experience. Online click and collect, being talked about a great deal in Jersey, some are doing. Is that what you see it moving more towards?
I think Catherine's got a very valid point there, that if you speak to a lot of independent retailers, knowing how many we have in St Helier in particular, they are using social media, and Facebook probably is the biggest option for them to get out promotions and to understand what's going on in their stores. So I think click and collect is working without being packaged as click and collect, so people are looking potentially at these Facebook adverts and then coming in and buying in store, which is really powerful. I think David Elliott, to mention you, will say many a time, and you've probably all heard it before, over 60% of Roisin's customers live within 10 minutes, I think it is, David, of the store, walking distance. Yeah. So that's a huge market that, you know, we have around us every day of the week, and I think it's really important that you have an online presence, but not necessarily a website. Because again, back to the small business and the amount of small businesses we have, it's important to have that.
Helen?
And I think just building on that, so whether it's an individual business or, again, comes back to partnerships and collective groups of people working together around a place to encourage people to come in to visit, because, you know, there is some new pop-up shop, or there is the market or some event or whatever else it might be, and how you use, again, all channels, digital channels, as well as signs at the airport, in the car park and all the other places to encourage people to come.
Okay. Yeah, Kushka.
Can I just add to that? That's a really important point. And where Catherine's based in Columbury, so within the town centre management, there are certain groups that we have. We've got over 11 retailer groups that we interact with, Columbury being one. And there's a few retailers who are very vocal within Columbury who really want to get together. So we had discussions probably 18 months ago about having a Discover Columbury group that would allow retailers, and again marketed as a group, Columbury being the area. We were going to design shopping bags that will have the map of Columbury on them, the independent retailers that are vital to the survival of that area. So that's something that, if, again, unfortunately Town Centre can't do it all themselves, if there was that partnership and Columbury really wanted to do that, then we could facilitate that and get that in Don Street and get that in Charing Cross, and have all of these amazing independent areas that we could do social media together on.
I don't know if you're just soaking stuff in, or you wanted to say something there, Paul, in addition to this. No, you didn't. Okay, that's fine. I've got loads of questions coming up. I'm going to go to introduce yourself, John.
John Marcus, Store Director of De Gruchy's. It's great to have the panel here today and to discuss this topic. And the point of Armageddon versus reinvention. I was delighted to see that 97% of the audience felt we had the opportunity for reinvention rather than going into Armageddon. We've seen from the state's investment in finance, our big brother, as a little brother retail. One question would be, what are we likely to see in comparison to the waterfront investment for retail investment to make the strategy delivered? And how will that be done with pace and agility?
Sounds like one for Lyndon, that.
It is one for Lyndon. We're starting with you there, Minister. Is this part of the sort of South Coast drift that you see?
Thanks, Dr. Jill, can I just very quickly go back to your question about taxing empty shops? I don't think we need any new taxes for empty shops, but perhaps we should be looking at incentivising empty shops, so landlords or potential new businesses offering them assistance or incentivising filling the shop rather than fining them for being empty. That's
so give landlords incentives with taxpayers' money.
I didn't necessarily say financial incentives, and I'm not necessarily talking about taxpayers' money, perhaps parish money might be better.
It's getting spicy.
I think what and this is being formulated as part of the government plan now. The government plan will replace the former medium-term financial plan. It will be predominantly a financial plan. And one of the things we're talking about, which will come out of the new economic framework, is establishing a sizable fund for capital infrastructure projects. So where I foresee taxpayer money helping, as it helped in developing the waterfront area, is by large investment in the town infrastructure, car parking, parks, squares, plazas, and just improving the public realm.
John, I'm going to come back to you just for a second, because you're the director of a large department store. I'm aware we've got two here, and we're going to go to Gerald in just a minute. Are you concerned that the waterfront and the money that's gone in down the waterfront and the 2,000 to 3,000 financial workers that are going down to the waterfront and the drift towards the waterfront is detracting from town? Because if people are down there, they're not going to walk into town, because we know what they're like.
I guess it's one of the changes that we're facing, Murray, and obviously nobody can stand still, and we appreciate the need to invest in all sectors of the economy to make them successful. And I guess as a retailer, we're probably slightly jealous of the investment that goes into that one sector to the proportion that it does. We know we've always been seen as the low value economy, whether from a productivity perspective or from an investment opportunity. It's great that there's a realisation that retail is important to the island and the number of people we do employ. And there are a number of businesses in the room that have invested significantly over recent years and will continue to invest because they've seen this seismic shift in the retail landscape. I guess if we could capture a significant part of the online opportunity, that exists from an international or a UK perspective, that would be something we could do and we look to thrive on, but there are challenges for us to do that. So we have to focus on what we do best, and that's our bricks and mortar, fundamentally locally, to provide great service and great opportunities and change for the local consumer.
Good advert. Right. Sorry, Paul, at the very end.
We work on towns and cities all over the country, and one thing's for sure is they don't stand still. You know, the world of retail is constantly changing, evolving. You need to look at your town centres every 5 years and say, is what worked 5 years ago still valid? Is it still appropriate? Centres move, urban spaces move, centres of gravity move, and what was a great retail location 5, 10, 15 years ago might not be the right location for retail currently. And so then it's the case of, let's look at what the assets are in that area. So if it's the market, let's make it a market quarter. Let's make much more of a thing like that. If it's a culture, let's make it a cultural quarter. Let's build on the assets, because at the moment St Helier's got lots and lots of really good assets in and around the town centre, and they're completely invisible. You wouldn't see them. Now I know you all know them because a lot of you live on the Isle of Hampton all the time, but a lot of customers don't. A lot of retail's about temptation, about letting people know, and obviously you get a huge amount of visitors over the summer which won't go, which won't go to those locations because they simply don't know about them. So it's about understanding how the assets of a given area and making the most of those as part of the whole city centre experience.
Okay, Helen, you want to pick up on this, and then I'll go with it.
I don't want to give Lyndon a get out of jail free card, so I'm very careful with what I'm about to say, but just going back to the question about investment in the industry on the back potentially of the strategy, I think it's really important to think of it not only from the perspective of where central investment might come, that is sort of, on the face of it, looks like it's going directly to do things that are supportive of the industry, but if any retail strategy, for it to, if it has the weight that I can feel in the room, there's the enthusiasm for, that will drive a much wider understanding across all the sort of decision makers in those other decisions that aren't, on the face of it, looking like they're sort of directly a retail decision, but actually at the end of the day would have a beneficial impact on the future success of the industry. And so thinking not just about how you make sure that he spends plenty of money in the future and invest it in the right place and holding him to account, and I'm sure you will, but also thinking about how to influence those other indirect things that will, at the end of the day, have potentially a beneficial impact as well. And having a really strong retail strategy that is understood by all those decision makers at whatever level of parishes and whatever the other correct terminologies are of where these decisions get taken is really important.
Elliot.
I think to add on to that, I think the awareness of what a strategy actually is massively important here. It's not a document that gets done in 2010 and then goes in a drawer. It's a living, breathing document. It's not just about, right, this is sort of where we want to go, this is where we're going, this is who's doing it, this is how we're going to do it, this is how we're going to invest in it. And every quarter, half, as we're starting to execute on that, we're going to see different things. The market's going to change, the economy's going to tank, it's going to get better, new technology will come out, all that sort of stuff. So this has got to be a living, breathing document that over time we all, everyone in this room, not just the retail group, although you'll be important to that process, but we can all feed into it and all have a part in playing. Because if we've got something to focus on, we can all go in that same direction. If we're all pulling in different directions, it's not going to work. And the retail strategy isn't going to work 100% for every single person. But as a group and as an island and as retailers and consumers, it will take us in a direction. If we're all aligned to that, we've got a chance of making this a fantastic island to be a retailer and to be a consumer in.
Okay. Unless anyone else wants to come back, I'm going to take another question. I've got one from Laurie coming in a second, but Graham, introduce yourself.
Hi, Graham Smith, Jersey Business. I'm interested in the panel's view on the power of markets and how that can drive real change. I'll give two examples from the UK. There's one which a lot of people will know, Borough Market. Whenever I'm in London and I've got 2 or 3 hours spare, I'll always go to Borough Market. I'm not going there to shop, I'm going there for the experience, I'm going there for the atmosphere. But yes, I do shop, I do buy, I do spend time there. The other example I'll give is my original hometown, Bury in Lancashire, which has probably the best markets in the north of England. But actually what happened in Bury, because of those markets, the whole of the retail sector around those markets suddenly thrived. And Bury now is probably the 3rd shopping centre in the north of England because of that. So when I look at Jersey, we have 2 jewels in terms of the markets, but I think as you commented there, people don't know they're there. So my question is, what is the power of markets from the Pound's perspective, and how can we do more to benefit from what we already have?
Oh, the markets.
I'll go first. Cause
You can go first
I'll
on
go
this.
first because so the next time you come to Borough Market, you can come and visit us because the BRC's office is like 2 minutes away from Borough Market. So I think that, you know, as you say, it is an amazing place. It is, you know, the buzz, the colour. You know, it's a tourist. What's the word? Beehive. I mean, everybody. Most of the people are tourists, as opposed to people who live or work in the area. And I think you know, again, if you think about what happens around it, so there's a lot of promotion of the different things that they do. There's a sort of broader space where they have events and people showcasing various things, and the whole area has got like a loyalty card that you can use, so all right across Bankside, which kind of is a whole part of that south bit of the river. So again, it's not just the experience of the market itself, it's how all these different things all fit together. And I so love it. It's right outside the river.
Okay, so yeah, Paul, you've been looking at our market.
I've been looking at your markets. For our sins, we are the UK's leading markets consultants. So there are a few markets across the country that we haven't worked on. We advise NMTS, National Market Traders Federation. Mike sits on the all-parliamentary group of 4 markets. I'm a mentor for markets for the NMTF. NMTF did a training guide on how to be a better market trader. We wrote every word of it apart from the introduction. 12-module, the first UK guide for market traders to become better retailers. So we do markets. Okay, your markets are a fabulous way of animating places, a fabulous ways of attracting footfall. One of the things they're also very good for is they're very good entries into business. So I think one of the you know, looking around the room here today, there aren't many people leaving school. There aren't many people who just starting into business, and I think markets are a fabulous way of encouraging entrepreneurship, of encouraging apprentices, of getting new people into the market, into the retail industry. About 3 years ago, we were working for NMTF as mentors. So I had 8 brand new school leavers who wanted to become retailers, and they wanted to start in markets. Some of them were food, some of them were retail. Some of them survived, unfortunately, some of them didn't make it through the first 6 months because they just didn't have the right attitude. But we gave them all the support we can. So markets per se are a very, very good way of driving footfall. Your market is a potential fantastic asset for the town. It's hidden. You can't see us. It needs a lot more help to help it thrive, to be polished, and to play a real active part of bringing people into the town.
When you say it's hidden, what would you do to uncover it?
Okay, I would make it so obvious to see the market that every time you came to the town centre and you walked up Queen Street, it was hitting you straight in the face. I would have fantastic signage, much more signage on Queen Street, signage going down to the market, signage outside the market. I probably wouldn't have car parking outside the entrances. I'd have market stalls outside the market so people can actually see activity. I'd be closing the streets on Saturdays and having external food fairs celebrating the fantastic produce that you have on the island, whether it's food, seafood, etc. I'd be doing as much as possible to bring the market out to the outside, from the inside out.
That's what he'd do.
Daphne, I've got to come to you after that.
I was going to say, when can he start? I absolutely agree with everything Paul said. I think being that the market is clearly an asset and we need to capitalise on it. We have two markets, so we shouldn't forget the fish market, very important. However, we do not do our best to showcase them. They're slightly divided in terms of they do not want to be part of the town centre to some degree because they feel they're not necessarily retailers. They're food manufacturers, one sitting right opposite me, who's glaring at me. I think it's very important that it's a mix. So our market is a mix of the retail leisure, of the tourists, but also of people on a daily basis shopping for fresh produce, etc. So I think we've got several uses. We have looked at trying to close that road, and I can't tell you the swear words that were mentioned to me at the time. We've looked at putting markets outside, but losing that car parking, again, was a very negative effect. But I would like to be brave. I think if we're going to do something and encourage it, then I'm not going to please everybody. And if I got support from the Department for Infrastructure, I feel we probably could change things. But we have to be brave to do that because they are vital, or they'll die. So yeah, support Paul, and I'd like him to start on Monday.
I'm going to come to you in a second, David, because I know you've got your hand up, and I am going to come to you because I know you're a market trader. So you're bound to have thoughts on this. And I'm going to come to Keith Beecham as well, because he's bound to have thoughts on Visit Jersey from this. That's a shock to him. Catherine, first, you are in Columbria. I guess you have the same feeling about Columbria at times. Bit hidden, not signposted. Did you ever consider going into the market? Would it be the sort of area and venue that your product or products like yours would work in?
I don't believe so. I think one of the main issues is what's been highlighted. You don't know what's in the market until you're in it. So I wouldn't want to basically be in a building where I didn't have a shop front that everybody could see unless they went through it. I also think I don't think it would be the right location for our products. You are correct that Columbria is a little bit out of the way. The amount of people who get to Boots and don't think there's any further to walk is amazing. I've had people come in who have lived in Jersey, come into the shop and go, "Oh, how long have you been here?" 12 years. No, I only came up here a couple of years ago and you weren't here. Probably not. And I think there is, unless you are going, now we've seen the finance move away. We see people who are walking in from sort of, Green Street. Love it when that car parking's getting smaller because that means fewer people are walking past my shop.
Sorry, they're closed off Pier Road now. I love it. Yeah, go on. Green Street, walking in, commuters.
Yes, so that we don't get as much footfall going that way anymore. And it seems to be a bit of a challenge to get people to go up Columbria. They seem to go down it if they need to, but they don't seem to want to go up. I don't know, it's a tiny little hill, maybe it's a bit much.
Shall we travel later up
there has to be something. I think people don't know what's up there. And I used to work at HSBC Expat, which is right down at the front. And I used to go to the shop in my lunch hour, and I'd get to the shop in my lunch hour, and basically have to turn around and walk back to work, because it took me so long to get there. We are now on the fringes of town.
Okay. My fault for taking us off markets for a second to Columbria. I will come back to markets because, David, you're a marketeer.
I'm not a marketeer. I trade in the markets, we're principally wholesalers. And it's certainly in my heart and passion. I was born a few hundred yards away from the central market. As I was born there, as my first home above a bakery. And through supplying bread, a staple in the area over the last 60 years, I have a pretty good idea about how the market's moved around, how people purchase food. I also know Borough Market quite intimately because my father was born 200 yards from there. And one of the keys to Borough Market is its ownership. It's preserved by ancient laws. It's in the ownership of the cathedral, of Southwark Cathedral, and they are intent on maintaining it as a food destination. So you imagine the value of that land is extraordinary when next door is the Shard.
Back to our market.
Well, I'm saying that when you're benchmarking, guys, it's really important to understand the local context. It's easy for us to look at facias and say, well, that belongs there or that doesn't belong there. I think the recent survey that was carried out as part of this process is that 40% of Islanders go to the markets at least once a month. People want to shop there. They don't need signage. We want to welcome tourists. We really want to welcome tourists into the markets, but they don't really spend that much. It's about food. It's not necessarily about retailing, Daphne. It's a different variety. You're a chef, and I know you understand these issues, and you see well. It's simply about accessibility. It's about parking, and for the last 25 years, the strategic processes almost deliberately missed out the economy and how it works in that partisan area. And we've got to anchor it. We've got to do some good. And going in with a fight over road closures isn't going to work. We need a cooperative plan about how the island is going to access this facility. They know where it is. I've not been in Oxford for 40 years. I don't know that market so well, but I know that transport's a massive issue there. You look at Borough Market, it's got London Bridge just around the corner, not just for people flooding out of the city, but it's got Thomas's Guys, all those hundreds of thousands of people who go past there every day. So it's about footfall, it's about access, and we're shutting it down at the moment.
David, thank you very much indeed. Paul, do you want to come back at all on access and transport? Because it is clearly an issue, but do we need it? Do we not need it? Is there enough footfall in town anyway?
Okay, there are two types of markets. There are markets which feed off footfall, and there are markets which generate footfall. Markets which generate footfall are typically those which are really, really big, 200, 150, 200 stalls, Portobello Road, Carnaby Street, Pescadec, sorry. But the vast majority of markets in the country actually feed off existing footfall. So, with all due respect, David, I disagree in terms of car parking. I don't think most people go shopping to markets by car. Most successful markets across the country are integrated as part of the city centre. They are integrated as part of the retail experience. They're well signposted. They're open when most shoppers are there. They're easy to get to. They're easy to use. They're easy to see. I think that there's enough footfall in St Helier, whether it's people shopping, whether it's people working, living to a lesser extent. But why can't you have an evening food market? Why can't you have during the summer a 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock market when people are wanting to hang around and enjoy some lovely island produce and food. So yes, of course there will be some people who'd like to join, but I think the vast majority of people are already in the city centre, and if the market was strong enough, they'd use it.
Okay, I know you want to come back on that, and I'm sure we will do at some point there. Keith, I want just to come to you, Visit Jersey.
Okay, thanks. We'll probably have about 750,000-ish visitors coming to the island this year. The 400,000 is the holiday makers, that's everybody else that comes for business, etc. So it's a big number. When you look at Visit Britain, there's sort of context to what I'm going to say. When you look at Visit Britain's data, they suggest that the overseas visitors to the UK spend over 20% of their total budget on, quote, retail. On this island, it's less than 20%, so there's a massive opportunity question. But specifically coming back to the markets, yes, we think it's a really important part of our sense of place. I think those of you who are in Jersey will know that the map last year had a picture of one of the famous traders, shall we say, Bill. On that map was several 100,000. So people coming to the island would have seen the market straight away. Very successful. It's been used for promotion. The kilted yoga, some people in the room will know what I'm talking about, filmed in the market. So I think we recognise, and visitors say to us through the exit surveys, it's great. A little bit about what we didn't know that it existed, but we did enjoy the experience. So I think it's massively important for the visitor market. The contribution I would make is that I think there's a day town centre opportunity and there's an evening town centre opportunity, and I think the market potentially has a role to play in that evening opportunity.
Okay, I'm sure there are others that want to say. Minister, just very quickly, in terms of the market, government support, we've heard about infrastructure, they need to support sustainable transport policy, I think is what David was alluding to there, and that area around there, and I think as Daphne was saying, if there was support from the Department of Infrastructure, they might be able to get some of what Paul was talking about. Is government aware of that? Would government support that?
Well, yes, of course. I think that markets are really important hubs. They are important hubs, and I think our market, I love our markets, but they need to be more of a hub. I mean, there's not enough room I don't think there's enough room to hang around in the markets and eat and drink and just be there and treat it as a hub. I think David was probably alluding to the logistics and the infrastructure in the park, because at the moment when you drive into town you can park all around it, but there's we've got parking but not necessarily all in the right place. It's like that Morecambe and White sketch. You're playing all the right notes but not in the right order. It's a bit like that. So we do need to improve the different markets. Are really important hubs, and we need to develop that aspect of them. And we can paint them yellow, if you like. And, I say that with the Norman's building, everyone talks about that, but if we can do something to the building that's acceptable to heritage and planning and all the rest of it to make it stand out, then let's do it.
Right. Going to move on because a lot of questions that I know people dotting around the one of us. Laurie.
Hi, Laurie Weld, Jersey Retail Association. Data. Okay, so I've been a retail manager over here for over 15 years before I became the CEO of the Jersey Retail Association. When I joined the Jersey Retail Association last year, the most shocking thing to me was the lack of available data. As a store manager, the first thing you do when you inherit a business is look at the health of your business through KPIs. And we ceased collating sales information for retail back in 2015. And all the sales data we have is actually worked backward from our value to the economy and GST returns. So we need this data to be able to benchmark anything that we bring forward if it's succeeding, and if we're going in the right direction, we need this data to stimulate inward investment. So what data do the panel believe we need, and where are we going to get it from?
I'm going to come to you first. Ollie, whilst you're not a retailer, you manage change, you manage KPIs within businesses, you look at indicators, you do that for a living. With regard to this question, what do you think we need?
Okay, it's absolutely vital. If you're flying a plane and your windows are blacked out and your controls are blacked out, you're not going to get very far. If you've got clarity, or even if your windows are blacked out, if you have clarity on the dials, you'll be able to see which way up you are, where you're going, that sort of stuff. It's absolutely vital in this day and age to be able to use good KPIs to make decisions. Key, obviously, footfall, really important. But there's a difference between a lead measure and a lag measure. If you are, for example, you want to lose weight, absolutely useless just keep measuring your weight because you've already done the things that will help you gain or lose weight. What you need to be doing is measuring things like how much exercise are you taking, how much fruit and veg are you eating, all that sort of stuff. And it's the same with retail. We need to be looking at those 5, 10, 15 key measures of the health of retail, which are predictors of strength, and measuring those. So footfall is something that you can't change. It's already there. By measuring it, what you can do, you can change football by attracting people, having a nighttime economy, having interesting things that are going on, bringing people in, which will then affect footfall. So we have to be looking at separating these measures. What are the things that we can do to increase the health of retail, and also then measuring the health of retail?
Chamber, correct me if I'm wrong, but Chamber a long time ago used to pay for cameras to monitor
one of the 3 football cameras. I think we've only got 1 now, is it? Yeah.
So a non-for-profit organisation representing business was paying for a camera for footfall, which it couldn't sustain. I think, Minister, I've heard you say in a scrutiny that you will quite happily pay for cameras to measure footfall, so we know where we are.
I think you've added the quite happily bit.
Gritted teeth, then.
We did have a cost-sharing arrangement, I think, on previous footfall. That sort of ran out, but yeah, we would be keen. I mean, information is going to be key to building this. But we also need, I think we can look to the hospitality sector with...
Can I just, sorry, you said you'd be keen to fund?
I am keen to provide funding for the gathering of information. Okay, that's going to be part of the strategy, and we need to sit down and work out, how that's going to happen and how it's going to work. But yeah, that's on the cards. We need to gather information. STR Global and things like that, the top hoteliers share all of their information securely, so there's no commercial secrets given away, and that information is used by all of the hoteliers. It manages average spends, revenues,
revenue parity, all those kind of things, and perhaps the retail sector needs to engage in something like that where they can commercially share a lot of their information into the centre that will give us some important data.
Helen, I see you nodding on that and pondering on it anyway.
Well, I was just sort of contemplating. So we work with the firm I used to work for actually.
So trying to look them up.
And in KPMG, who I'm sure are here, and collate sales data from retailers in order to be able to give that outcome measure for individual businesses and for individual businesses to be able to benchmark their performance against the market. So I've just written down as Lyndon was speaking there as to whether there is an opportunity to, everybody sort of talked about retail and then financial services being this, bigger part of the economy. Maybe that's the place to go to get some of that input and support, because certainly from a UK point of view, I mean, KPMG work with us, the BRC, because they know that it's in their interest as well as ours to have their name associated with something that is appearing in the every Monday morning's trading meeting as to how a particular business is doing in comparison to their market. So just all this.
Thank you. One of the other really simple ways of measuring performance is to talk to retailers, is to ask retailers how they're trading. So quite a lot of the other local authorities, and particularly BIDs, who are very keen on information that we work on across the country, we do annual surveys for them. So we do an annual survey. It's a survey which is handed out to all retailers. We pick it up same day. We get fabulous response, usually 80–90% response. And we ask questions. We don't ask for sales, but we ask for trends in sales. We ask for, we probe in specific issues. So if there's been a particular promotion, late night opening, how successful was that in actually generating additional footfall? What are the priorities you want the town centre to focus on this year? What are the real burning issues that are stopping you growing your business? What are the things you'd really like to improve about trading in the association? So that's something that you could do, we could do for you, you could do yourself. It's not expensive. It's about $4 or $5 grand to do a survey. You get 200 people. We just did one in Norwich. We handed out 150 surveys. We got 120 fully completed surveys back. So it's not a complicated thing. So the data's there. It's just going about collecting it the right way.
I know you'd love a few more stats, wouldn't you? And you'd love some regular monthly updates of how, and I'm not going to say the high street, our retail sector is operating.
Yes, absolutely. So the parish of St Helier have committed to keeping the footfall camera live, and that's the one we have outside Voisins. Thank you, Gerald, very much for supporting that. So I think we are working as well from a parish perspective with the States of Jersey Police and Digital Jersey to look at other opportunities for footfall cameras, or to utilise the cameras that are existing, and that's obviously going through some compliance at the moment and some governance. So we're just working on that, which means we would be able to anonymise the data but have 40 potential cameras that we can understand the whole of the town centre, because at the moment all we know is about King Street. So I think that's something that we're working on, just to let you know. The other thing that we measure, and I measure as a town centre, is vacant shops, and we can see that we are healthy compared to the UK at about 2.2% versus the UK fluctuates for the last thing. I think it was about 11 or 12%, depending on the jurisdiction. And I think that's a key thing that we need to measure. We obviously see the big, we always get this Armageddon, as Helen mentioned earlier, about Next is empty, Thomas Cook is empty, Mothercare is empty, but actually we've had a few empty for quite a while actually in Austin Reed. There is some churn within the market, so I think we need to be aware we are not Armageddon. We are healthier than potential other UK town centres. However, based on obviously what's going to go into the strategy, having more of that data to be able to encourage inward investment would be key. And I think we need to have footfall, empty shops, a reason to be here. We know that data, if you speak to retailers, they'll tell you, BHS, for instance, when it was here, was within the top 10 of their portfolio across the UK. So, we know that we can make profits in Jersey. It's just how we go about that and how we encourage more people to invest.
Okay, we could talk about this for a long time. I've got questions yet aware from David, from Gerald, and from all front row. Before I go to that, not just about town centre though, is it, retail? There is out of town shopping, limited, small, parish shopping. Kennebay I think of particularly. Paul, has that been encompassed into the strategy? Does that make part of what you've been looking at? Because you've spoken a great deal about town centre and what a town centre should look like. But what about out of town?
Absolutely, yes, is the short answer. Local retail across the island is very important in terms of anchoring communities. It's very important that retail is supported, and that retail could be as much about cafes, restaurants, bars, as it is about shops. So certainly the strategy is obviously focused on some areas because that's where most of the shops are. But certainly the local parish retail is to be supported. As well as the edge of town, out of town, big box retail to be avoided and resisted.
Supermarkets, a lot of those are out of town too. They're out of the main area. I can think of quite a few of our supermarkets which are out of town and structured away from that. Do they have a part to play in all of this, or are they a side issue to what the town looks like?
I think it's about giving consumers a choice, and the one thing supermarkets typically do is provide fabulous customer service and open when customers want to use it. So I think you've got to give them the choice. I think your focus has to be on your town centres first, always. But at the end of the day, if people want to use the supermarkets on the way home from work, then that's perfectly their choice to do that.
We could talk garden centres as well. We're not going to right now. Gerald.
Yes, the panellists dread the double-barrel question, so here's a double-barrel question for you. Over the last 40 years, Jersey has become more reliant on retailers, on UK retailers providing shopping for islanders. Does the panel believe that more UK retailers opting for an omni-channel retail offer to their customers will decide not to locate in Jersey? And if the panel believe that could be the case, then what should the policy response be from Jersey?
Wow, Daphne might be our guest.
I quite like a double, whatever you call it, question. Just to confirm, I just had a conversation this morning actually with one of our real estate agents, and he's actually left the building, so I can say it. There is a lot of interest. I think we need to be aware that obviously retail, the UK, European chains need to work along with the independent mix, so I think it's very important that we have that first and foremost, and we are not turned into a completely UK high street. However, I do believe that there is still a lot of interest, so we just mentioned about those vacant spaces. There is a lot of interest in those, but I hate to mention it, I blame Helen, Brexit, because she mentioned it earlier, is preventing them from investing at the moment. So it's not Armageddon here. We have a lot of interest in retail. They are UK and European retailers, so we just have to get over this next couple of months potentially and see what happens there. I don't know if that answered your question, but it's the way I feel it is in the market at the moment, Gerald.
Just quickly, again, just back to the choice. I think the Centennial retail experience is good. It could be great. It should be fantastic. And there are clearly some gaps in the market in terms of particular categories. I think the food provision particularly is quite underprovided for. Food is increasingly becoming part of the retail experience. As Mike says, we worked in Windsor for quite some years for Aberdeen Standard. And on Sunday, the number one reason why people come into town to Windsor is for food. It's to meet friends and relatives, to have some food, spend family time, and then when they're in town, they might do some shopping as well. So I think there are opportunities to attract people, but as Daphne says, it's not about replicating the existing offer. We need to do everything we can to really, really keep the independent offer strong, and the more we can support that, the more the town centre will thrive and provide that excellent experience.
Catherine, you seem to have managed your business in a way that 50% of it is online anyway, and not on island, but going off island, international, and to the UK. Your location, do you ever get concerned that one of your major competitors were going to be opening in the town doing exactly the same market sector that you're doing? Is that a concern of yours? You're probably competing with large department stores now.
I'm already competing with Boysons and Grishies and Marks and Spencers. And I think, to be honest, between all of us, we've got most of the key brands covered. I have exclusivity with the brands that I sell, so they can't be stocked by anyone else locally. majority of my customers are very brand loyal, so I don't anticipate them. And to be fair, most of what their alternatives are already available in the island. I'm not overly concerned. I think you've got to sort of do you, and if you spend all your time worrying about what might be, you know, a competitor to turn up tomorrow, you know, if Victoria's Secret turned up tomorrow, then yeah, it would impact my business, but, you know, I can't change that. You
Just
know,
make yours as good as you can make it.
I've just got to adapt and make sure that I'm actually worth coming to.
Part of economic development's role, Minister, is to engage with inward investment into the island. That's a bit of a double-edged sword, though, isn't it? Like the double-barrel question. You can do that, but you can destroy local businesses by doing it.
Well, business demand is consumer-driven, and businesses will want to go to where their products and services are desired by the consumers. And Gerald's question about omni-retailing, and Helen could probably answer a lot better than I can, but that's sort of, I think currently it's a sort of holy grail of retailing where the retailers are offering a sort of a seamless, sort of multifaceted experience for their customers across all platforms.
But I think it's really whether UK retailers need to set up in Jersey because they can sell in online.
Well, a lot of UK retailers find it profitable and very successful trading in Jersey. We've got very high GVA, it's an affluent society. Their average spends and their margins are high here. So I think there'll always be a demand. They'll always want to come here if they can make money.
Helen.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think I've written follow the money. So, I mean, I say all these retailers in the room, you're all, you know, very diligent business people. It's all about the sales, the profit, and most importantly, the cash. And so at the end of the day, I think people will still come from UK retailers, whether they've got an omni business or whatever channels they're operating through, if there is an opportunity and a customer base and the right environment and the opportunity to make some money here. And I think that importance of diversity of, you know, the independents, the local brands, as well as some, you know, UK brands and even international brands is going to be part of that future success. And just to pick up on Daphne's point, I might be responsible for lots of things, but Brexit is very